drinking coffee and nothing else. It's something that we're all very accustomed to, I would assume. And of course, all of this is part of the hustle for any creative. But of course, in the bigger context of our discussion and what we're trying to achieve here, we've got very high levels of unemployment as a country here in Uganda. And the Youth Ideathon is seeking to attract young people all across different disciplines to try and solve our biggest challenges. Now, of course, we know that to solve any challenge, you have to be creative. So beyond the creative industry, creativity as a skill on its own by default becomes very important. But how important does the creative industry itself then become in the larger scheme of things? How do we identify ways for creatives to adapt, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and to come out of that? How do we get people to stimulate their thinking and innovation? The creative industry, of course, sits at the very heart of that, and we'll be hoping to get some insights on that from some people who are in this space and share their thoughts on what we need to do, and of course, give you some guidance if you need some good ideas. First, though, of course, I want to hand over to Dennis Aguma, who is a founder and CEO at NASE, to give a quick overview, as he has done for all the sessions, and then we will pick up with our distinguished panel, which I will be introducing in just a couple of minutes. Good morning, Dennis, and over to you.
Good morning, Ben. Thank you very much for that introduction. And by the way, thank you very much for all your support so far, including yesterday when we were celebrating the Youth Skills Day. My name is Aguma, Dennis Aguma. I am the team lead here at NASE. We are a social enterprise that was registered in 2015 with support from Kingston University. We've since gone on to enjoy support from other institutions like University of Surrey, Anglia Ruskin University, and most recently, Birmingham City University, where I lecture and do research around enterprise and entrepreneurship. But we've also worked heavily with some of the institutions here in Uganda, the likes of Makerere University Business School, all the way to Kabale University, which is my hometown. We focus mainly on supporting enterprise and entrepreneurship and skilling the youth mainly in higher education institutions. And as most of the creatives will know, entrepreneurship skills are really lifelong skills, including things like creativity, innovation, communication. So we think that focusing on entrepreneurship skills and equipping young people before they leave universities really is the right way forward, especially for a young population like Uganda. So we are on a vision or on a mission to leverage the power of entrepreneurship to help Uganda achieve sustainable socio-economic transformation. What is the Youth Ideathon? People keep asking us. I've explained this before, but maybe for someone who's just joining us and hasn't actually been on the previous panels, because what we found, and this is the whole point of thematic session, that we've received ideas from different sessions, from different themes. The whole point of thematic sessions is that there might be some information that is relevant to a particular theme, and someone does not necessarily have to attend all the other themes, but they might want to focus on this particular one. So for those who have not heard what this Ideathon is about, I can explain it further, but those who have heard it before, please bear with us for the benefit of those who have not heard it before. So the word Ideathon is borrowed from the word ideation, which starts with really a simple idea, as you can tell. It's a creative process of generating and developing ideas, but you can develop those ideas and they stay behind. How do you communicate those ideas in such a way that someone, for instance, can fund you, that a customer can buy your product? So we're taking young people on this journey to help them not just imagine or be inspired to come up with a business idea, but to take them on this marathon of a journey. Anyone who's been in entrepreneurship, Ben was talking about red eyes. I didn't realize actually how red our eyes were, Ben, until I saw the pictures from the TV session yesterday. Anyone who is talking about red eyes, about entrepreneurship, will know that it's not a walk in the park, especially the creatives. You're usually working away in your bedroom, in your garages, in incubation centers. Clients want the jobs there and then, but also your creativity can find you in a shower, and you just have to drop everything that you're doing. You just have to get on and work. That drive, that desire, means that most often the entrepreneurship journey is a lonely journey. You're literally on your own. So we want to give you a hand along that way and give you some funding, and these are grants, not loans or anything like that. Give you sessions like this where you can be inspired and listen to people who are actually in the trenches trying to do something about their ideas. Give you some incubation support post the Ideathon itself. And the Ideathon, of course, is open to individuals as well as groups and organizations. The reason we are put the bar so low, and I say so low deliberately, because often, and I did mention this as well, this is one of the reasons the UNDP engaged NASE to run this Ideathon, is that in their experience, and they've been giving lots of grants to businesses under the Youth for Business facility, where they support businesses that are perhaps a year older, maybe registered and things like that, that have business plans and are able to articulate their ideas. Most of you creatives will know, especially under the gig economy, people are gigging, you know, and they are not necessarily structured in that kind of fashion. So the UNDP recognizes that and engaged NASE to focus on these young people with their ideas, perhaps those within the gig economy, trying to make ends meet, but give them a structured way in which they can actually make businesses out of these ideas that they're doing. So most startups, we know that they lack, they fail from the lack of a customer rather than lack of a product. So we are really focusing just on the idea itself. What pains and challenges are you trying to solve within your community? And what's your solution to that? We're just really focusing on that. In the subsequent sessions, which we're calling masterclasses, we will have an opportunity to take you through further aspects of the business, things like business model canvases. But rest assured, you will not, we don't expect you to be worrying about 5-year business plans and things like that. No, it's really an entry-level project, and I would encourage everyone to really submit your idea, because you might be surprised. This is the process and how it looks like. Right now, we're going through the application process, which should end by Friday next week. We had initially set out to track 1,000 ideas, but as you will see below, those ideas have gone through the roof, so to speak. We had contemplated stopping it sooner rather than later, but the desire and hunger for young people has been such that we've left it open up to the end of next week. We are now going through the thematic sessions, after which, and these end Friday next week. After that, we get into what we call the real Ideathon, putting these ideas on a proper marathon, so to speak. And then people will be expected to pitch their ideas, perhaps using video, especially for the creatives. You're welcome to pitch your idea in whichever manner or format you so please. It could be a video. It could be actually a live thing. It could be, I was speaking to Rebecca Nanjago, one of our panelists, how she helped us to market, to encourage people to apply, the creativity with which she went about it. Interesting stuff. So we are very open to how people actually pitch their idea, but we'll guide you as part of the bootcamp. And then after that, the winners will be announced, where one of them will win 100 million shillings. But there are lots of other grants from region. So there'll be regional winners, there'll be category winners, and there won't just be one winner, there will be 1, 2nd, 3rd, and so on. So there's quite a number of grants and support that is available. Yesterday on the World Youth Skills Day, we were we're having a discussion on NBS, and Madame Elsie, the resident representative of the UNDP, was talking about this ecosystem approach, where we are leveraging, for instance, all these ideas that we have. It won't just be, for instance, NASE incubating them. The UNDP already has a pipeline through which some of these others might be absorbed. Indeed, there is a call going out right now for the creatives, the big hitter creatives. While, for instance, we're talking about potentially 100 million worth of grants, this other call has slightly bigger funding. So if you're thinking, let's say, of the next Wakanda, perhaps that might be one of the calls that you might want to interest yourself in. So myself and my colleagues will be sharing a lot of information about that in the chat boxes after. So please keep an eye on that. The other thing to make note of is our digital interactive dashboard. We've designed the dashboard now that should give you confidence with regards to the intellectual property within your ideas. This particular session, much more than all the others, will be very familiar and aware of intellectual property. You don't usually get to talk about this in sessions like agriculture, but for the creative industries, intellectual property is a really, really very important thing. And working with Hostelite, we have been able to design a platform that should give us some level of confidence in terms of protecting your identity, protecting your idea, vetting who is looking at these ideas, and with our partners, ILA, Innovate Labs Africa, who are experts in intellectual property, working, of course, with the Ministry of Science, Technology, as well as the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. One of the offerings that we're putting on the table for anyone that is participating in this ideathon is if your idea is one such idea that requires support or patentable, we have experts online to help you patent your idea. This process is a very expensive process. On average, we were looking at the numbers the other day. On average, it costs you about 1,800. 185,000 on average, because some of these intellectual property registrations are very complicated, but some are basic, like registering your logo, simple things like that. So our experts will look through all those, but this support is really, really, really invaluable. And we're hoping to support anywhere between 400 to perhaps 500. We think, based on the ideas that we're seeing, that some of those ideas, those are the numbers we're looking at that we think are potentially patentable or have some intellectual property to protect and register. So if nothing else, even if you don't win, that's a huge, huge opportunity not to be missed. The other aspect of the digital platform, of course, is, and this one is going live on Sunday, all the participants will be receiving emails so that they can go back. You can go back and edit your application. What we're seeing, and the whole purpose of these sessions, if there's anyone out there who is applied through the creative industries stream, the purpose of these sessions is maybe to help you rethink your idea. Is there anything that bear with me one second. Yeah. Is there anything that you have learned today that might enrich your application? Obviously, every edition that you make will be tracked, so we know what the original idea was like, what changed when it changed. We'll have judges and panelists in the back end whom you can interact with. Everyone will be assigned different categories. You can send them messages. This message thing, the screenshot doesn't do it justice. It's very interestingly highly interactive. You can send notes to whoever. You can schedule meetings with your judges, with your mentors. You can send attachments as we do the masterclasses. There will be opportunities to work on things like canvases, to do some market research and provide reports and things like that. So there will be opportunities for you to interact in a digital fashion. Perhaps to share some of the numbers that we're looking at the moment. This was from last Friday. And I don't want to spook you in terms of the numbers that have since come in, but I think by Monday next week, we should be reporting numbers in the region of 3,000. But as of last Friday, these were the numbers that we were looking at. We were looking at more males than females, which is again a bit disappointing for us because we know that our sisters are more entrepreneurial than our brothers, but somehow our sisters are not registering as much. So I would encourage all the panelists and anyone who's listening there, especially those who are engaging or working in circles where most of our young female creatives live, to encourage them to apply or submit their ideas for support. The other thing that it has interested us is in school applications. People who are declaring themselves as in school are actually more than those who are out of school. Again, an interesting statistic for an organization like ours that focuses mainly on supporting young entrepreneurs, but perhaps not surprising, as the vast majority of our young people are in school anyway. We're one of the youngest, if not second youngest population in the world. So this statistic should not be surprising to anyone, and justifies why, for instance, more support for startups, for innovation, for creativity, entrepreneurship skills really should be focused on these guys who are still in school. The other quick thing to go through is registrations by region. I'll let you mule over these ones. But the one that might be interesting for the panel today is, while agriculture was high up there, the creative industry was the second biggest. But What is the creative industry? Most people keep asking us, perhaps worth mentioning that the creative industry or the industries, for instance, are diverse. They include, as you can see on the screen, museums, environmental heritage, the likes of Kasubi Tombs, in Fort Portal. I could go on, huge. And lots of economies in the West have made them a huge meal out of some of these. People come to tour these kind of sites, and along the way, they will have to sleep somewhere. They'll have to eat something. Someone has to drive them to and from that place. They'll take pictures that they share on platforms like these, and other people come and visit. So these industries are huge. They include literature, print media, performing arts, design, broadcasting, and electrical stuff. Music composition. When you talk about creatives, most people think of music, they think of video, but we have visual arts, we have fashion, gaming and gamification. Actually, gaming is missing out on this one of my favorites. That industry alone, I was mentioning the other day, is bigger than music and video combined. So we want to rally our young people to come forward with their creative ideas, and we will support you. As I mentioned earlier, the UNDP has another separate track. So this particular track, which is for grants, smaller grants of up to 100 million, one of the other tracks has potentially bigger grants. So if you're planning to do a Wakanda type of blockbuster, please do not hesitate to forward some of those brilliant ideas. So I'd like to thank everyone, especially our panelists, for sparing your time and joining us. Our support partners, all of whom are listed at the bottom there. In the interest of time, I probably won't go through them all, but most especially the UNDP's Accelerator Lab, most of whom have been with us, not just before the Ideathon was launched, but throughout all these thematic sessions. I thank you very much. And of course, our resident representative who believed in us and gave us a chance to execute the Ideathon, which has so far been very, very successful. Maybe to mention briefly, Ben, that the coming sessions for next week from Tuesday to Friday, and there will be manufacturing, minerals and renewable, smart cities, urban development, STEM, and people are encouraged to not miss those. Thank you, over and out.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Yes, and of course, as you mentioned, it's very important that, especially now for the creatives, you want to be in each of these sessions because you never know where the ideas are going to come from there for you, and to pay attention to that. Dennis also did mention the UN call for the creatives. We're going to ask, we'll share the link to the registration for that in the chat, so you can be able to pick it up and go and register. There's a call. And it's a big one, obviously. It's much bigger than the Ideathon because it's a specific track for creatives. So it's on its own, and it's something that you want to pay attention to, right? As we get down to our panel, someone was asking about the deadline for registration. I think that has been also taken care of. 25th, that's end of next week. So you can be able to do that. If you want to get in touch with us on Twitter, of course, we want you to use the hashtag Youth Ideathon. And you can tag at NASE UG, you can tag me at Ben Wine, you can tag at Aguma. I would love to hear from you. Speaking of hearing from you, if just to make sure that everyone is sort of paying attention to what's going on, I would like to know what you do. If you could kindly type in the chat, what are you? Are you a copywriter? Are you a filmmaker? Are you a producer? Are you a broadcaster? What are you for the people on the chat with us? If you could type for just a little bit so we can take note. Orator. Oh, that's an interesting one, Catherine. Orators are in very, very high demand these days. Dennis is a musician with Bantu vibes. Good to see you. Filmmaker, Josh, good morning. Thanks a lot for joining us. Writer, Tutu, you're a writer. Lukman, well, Lukman, you don't need any interaction. You're not allowed to say anything. Lois is a fashion designer, craft maker. Brian, good to see you. Go Girls Go Foundation. Dorothy, you're an artpreneur. Cheswa Semweya, boat builder. That's a good one. I see someone who is a self-published poet, Mark Benjamin Katamba. Good to see you. James Otim, you have ICT skills. Yes, that's very important. Isaac, you're a broadcaster like myself. Albert Adrian, you're a content marketer. So we have fashionistas from the Ultimate team. We've got graphic designer and photo videographers. amazing. It's great to see how diverse all of our. I see an architect. Dennis, you should be very excited about this. I see a 3D visualizer. I'm going to be looking for you. I need to do my my 10-bedroom house in Chigo very soon. So I'm going to look for you so you can do some renders for me. Oh, poultry cages builder. That's an interesting one. Wow, amazing. Andrew in Soroti, thanks a lot for joining us as well. Good to see you. Please keep on sharing this stuff in the chat even as we go on while we have the main sessions. We usually like to encourage you to, you know, talk to one another even in the chat room. Let's get into our session. I want to introduce our first panelist who I've known for a very long time. Actually, I think when you look at it in some context, I think we might be related, I think. But yeah, he's the founder and director at Nomad, which is creative agency. He has more than 20 years experience in the branding and communications industry, and he's worked for some of the biggest clients in the land, not only here, but in the region on some of the biggest projects that we have had around. Mr. Ariho Kamara, a very good morning to you. I'd like you to take a few moments. Of course, I know we have a very big panel and Dennis has taken all our time, but we'd like to get some insight from you in terms of the background of the creative industry, especially in the context of Uganda, how it has been seen, how you have seen it grow, because you've been in it from the very long time when we're using Windows 95, I think. So what your background and experience has been for the benefit of our younger people who probably don't know what MS-DOS is.
Wow, thanks, Ben. I'm not that ancient for our listeners, yeah, but I've been around for some time. Like Ben has said, my name is Ariho Kamara, and I happen to lead the team at Nomad. We're a regional creative agency with presence here in Uganda and Rwanda, and we are looking to be in a city near you. We are really strong on partnerships. Quickly to the question that you asked, Ben, I think I just really was pondering on the creative industry in Uganda, and what became very clear for me is that it's one of those neglected industries, and the reason is because the A students who were trained to take the white-collar jobs, as they've been called, were the people who used to ace stuff in school. So the creative arts were left for the C and D students. So it kind of got shuffled to the bottom of the industries, if you will, and was neglected because it was seen as one that attracted the academic dwarfs, if I may call them that. So just looking at the panel here, I can see that with the exception of a few who would want to object, but I'd like to submit that they are not all A students. If we go back to look at their report cards, there were guys who got creative with their homework and gave the teacher what the teacher was not looking for because they were extremely creative. That was me. And I remember having a conversation with my dad trying to change my course from Bachelor of Commerce into art, and he gave me the look. You all know the look. So I endured and gave him his qualification, and off I went to do the stuff that I was really passionate about. But briefly, that's been the story of the creative industry in Uganda. It's been left to those who were seen as the failures, if you will, people who didn't ace it in school. And yeah, so it suffered that stereotype, if you must. So right now it's the tables have turned. I must say that the A students are working for the C students while the B students are running our government, and that's how come we're here. So we are looking to change the narrative, and I believe that we have a lot of stuff that we can offer, because if you look at our economy, it's really largely hinged on the creative industry. I mean, if you agree that everything we see around us, whether they are cars or tables or chairs, everything that we see around us was an idea, and it needed someone to creatively bring that idea out and bring and give form to it. So without really belaboring the point, I think we've suffered a bit of stereotype, being seen as bottom of the food chain. But we have lots to contribute to the economy. We have, and we're beginning to see traction. We're beginning to see governments stop and listen. And yeah, I hope to listen to some of my other colleagues on what they think about what it is, that the creative industry has to offer to our nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamara. I'm laughing a bit hard, one, because you talk about the look. Now I know Uncle Charles very well, and I can imagine what he must have been like giving you that look, and tough Muchiga man that he is, and tougher Muchiga man that you are for insisting on going and doing what you wanted, because that was definitely a tough one. I remember that as well, going into the university. Dennis knows very well, he's known me for more than 30 years, that I had always wanted to be in the media industry. I thought it was a very easy way to get attention from girls. And so I decided from a very early age that I was going to get into this media space. When I told my dad, he said, in Runyankore, he said, which translated directly says, you want to become a muyai. And that's sort of been the thing with creatives. When you talk about creatives, people think about dreadlocks and certain green plants and and things like that.
Maybe if I can interject briefly. I mean, you remember what they used to call the MDD students? They were the Musiru Daradara, right? These are the people who had gone into the creative arts. And I remember my dad used to make that comment and say, while the prime ministers and the big shots are having a meal, you're out and about blowing trumpets and trying to make music to wash their meal down. So you don't want to be among the guys who are trying to soothe the big shots. You want to sit at the table of men, if you will. So that was really a strong statement towards the creative arts, if you will. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Absolutely. And of course, the Basiru Daradara are now MPs and presidential candidates and presidential hopeful. So again, let me come to David Ogutu. Before I do, someone was complaining that they can't hear me properly. If you can hear me well, please type loud and clear, just so I know that I need to increase my volume. If you can hear me, please type loud and clear, just so I know, and maybe I can shift my head or whatever. Oh, okay, you guys can hear me. So maybe it might be your speaker if you can't hear me properly. Let me come to you, David. Kamara has put some very good context into this in terms of the fact that in the creative industry, we've been pretty much stigmatized. We almost like people with disabilities. For the longest time, we've been treated like the third class, fourth class citizens. And yet it turns out that actually the entire time we were sort of running things and making things happen. You remember very clearly, and no offense to him, but you've had the president basically at some point rubbish us and say that the only thing that we needed to do was focus on the sciences and pay science teachers more. That has changed obviously now with the government and the leadership and everyone realizing that, oh, you actually need the creatives to get everything else going. From your perspective, I should introduce David first of all. David is a team lead at Kafunda Creatives. He's the founder there as well. And his dream is to give at least one person the opportunity he never had as a creative coming up. I've known David for a very long time as a business partner, as a colleague, as a boss. And for that, he was a total pain. He always has been creative. So no surprises there. But David wants to live in a world where everyone can live up to their full potential, and he doesn't apologize for that. And he's very vocal and very loud. Again, he's a creative, so in the broadcast space, that's bound to be expected. Right, so David, the big question for you is, in terms of the importance of the creatives and the creative industry to the economy, in the Ugandan context especially, how much do you think this has been understated? And how far off are we from people actually realizing just how really important we are in the economy?
Okay, so as regards that, thank you very much, Ben, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining the call, and thank you, NASE, for having me on this. So let's just look at some numbers, right? The creative and culture industries are estimated to be worth $2.2 trillion. And that's the world. Africa, unfortunately, attracts only 1% of this, of this 2.2 trillion. And unfortunately, the majority of that goes to Nigeria and South Africa. So there is no data as to, you know, how much comes down to countries like Uganda. The forecast from you know, the world is that the creative and culture industry is going to be contributing about 10% of the world's GDP. Of course, most of this is in Europe and stuff, but it shows the kind of potential that this industry has to accelerate an economy. Now, if we get down to our African context, right? Nollywood, which is what, the second biggest film industry in the world right now, it employs an estimated 1 million people, sorry, directly and indirectly, you know. And if we're looking for something that's going to accelerate employment and that has a knockdown effect, the creative industry is one of those things, because it does not have a the pipeline is huge in terms of, you know, the things that can be down the line. Creative industry accounts for 7% of all the jobs in South Africa. It contributed 5.3% of the country's GDP for Kenya between 2007 and 2009. Those are the latest stats that are coming out. Now, as far as the Ugandan industry, the estimate is that the creative and culture industry is bringing about 11.3 billion shillings. And that was taken as a baseline from approximately 12,000 SMEs that are in the sector. All right. So just looking at the numbers, with unfortunately an industry that has been ignored, there's been you know, very little movement from the people who make our policy in sort of supporting this industry and making sure it thrives. But even with those restrictions, the numbers are very promising. And I mean, it goes without saying that if, you know, the right things are put in place, I'm really happy for, you know, programs like the Youth Ideathon that are giving people a chance, you know, to be able to get their ideas out there. Because one of the biggest things, okay, you know, I have this idea, but creating is really expensive. The tools are really expensive. Getting started is really expensive. The education, because a lot of times we have, you know, creativity, but we need the science that goes with that. And the education can be really expensive. And so with the right kind of support, and of course, hopefully, with the right kind of data, yeah, coming through from UBOS and from the government and from organizations like NASE that are getting some of this information, you know, we can see that the potential for the creative industry is so huge. Yeah. Right now, it's approximately 3% of Uganda's total GDP. Right. This was as of the 2017 report from UBOS. It can be much bigger than that if it gets, you know, the right kind of support and the right movement in the right direction.
Thank you very much, David. Very interesting stats there. And speaking of, so let me first move very quickly to Lukman Ali, who is a very familiar name. Of course, we all know him from the production industry and the film industry. In terms of, and good morning to you, Lukman, in terms of the global trends that we are seeing happening at the moment, one of the things that used to happen, it's improved a little bit, but I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s, Uganda would usually catch on to the global trends about 4 or 5 years later. If you were to draw a picture of some of the global trends that we are still behind on, that maybe the people on the call today can use to get some ideas. I'll give you a very simple example. FM radio had been in existence for literally forever. And by the time it came to Uganda in 1993, we were a decade or so behind the rest of the world. Same thing with TV production and what's been going on with that. So if you were to pick some of the trends where the world has already gone far ahead of us that people can begin to sort of pick up on for opportunities and ideas, what would those be? Over to you, Lukman. Did we lose Lukman?
Sorry, my mic was off.
My mic was off. For you to say your mic was off is a complete taboo and unacceptable. We should fine you for that.
Sorry. I forgot to check that.
You could have just lost
thanks for having me, Ben.
You could have just lost the best take on the scene because, you know, the sound guy wasn't recording, man.
Yeah, so I think some of the trends that we need to adopt is, especially like in film, I think we need more automation. I have a friend who has a lot of money and they started up a studio recently, but they chose to consult with us after buying all the gear that, and what they bought was like, it's like 10 years obsolete now. But because we have this thing where we want to get the same thing that the other guy has. So we're not really trying to get onto the trends that are out there. Most of, I'm going to speak for my industry because that's what I understand. And I think we need to move into automation and virtual filmmaking. It's just kind of it's on the rise now, especially due to COVID. But I think if we invested in that right now, I think it would give us an edge. Yeah, it's pretty much what I think.
Right. Thank you very much. That's very interesting. There's someone here from Colin saying that we should not try to catch the wave because if you wait, the wave comes to you, trends come and go. That's very interesting, a thought there from you. Let me come to you, Rebecca, to get some thoughts from you. Of course, Dennis has already talked about you and what you do. You're a multi-passionate entrepreneur. You're on a mission, especially for women, to show up as best as they can. And thanks a lot for joining us. You're the founder of Swap and Talk, a safe space for women to be able to share and learn from one another as they collaborate in the creative space. Wanted to find from you, in terms of what you've been seeing with COVID-19 especially, and the ladies that you're working with and all of that. You have had Dennis talk about the fact that we are still struggling with getting more women to register for the Ideathon, for example, and yet we know that women are usually the ones who are a bit more entrepreneurial than the rest of us. What are some of the things that you think we could do to help support, especially women in this creative space and for them to be able to shine and stand out very strongly?
Thank you so much, Ben. I'm so happy to be here. So what I think is at the core of all those things is a confidence issue. Most women are used to taking the back seat and having men do things. So I don't think women are not brilliant. Women are extremely brilliant, extremely creative, but most women struggle to take up space because we are brought up to think, you know what, you should be meek, you should, you know, let the men take the lead. You shouldn't be aggressive because when you're aggressive, you'll be unattractive. So what I really strive to do with my work is to be that woman that shows up and encourages other people to take up spaces. Yeah.
And you're doing an amazing job of that as well. I have had the chance to visit the thrift shop, so I am very proud of you and the work that you're doing, and it's amazing. And thank you. We'll be coming back to you in a little bit. Of course, I want to encourage everyone who's joining us on the call. Please feel free to ask any questions that you have. We've got a Q&A tab up on your call. You can just go and throw the questions in there and we'll come to them and try and make sure that you get answered. I should also point out that after we officially close the session, we will then have a Q&A if you want to stay behind and ask any questions that you might have. Dennis will be available to take care of those, and some of our panelists actually might be staying behind to also help answer any of those questions. But in the meantime, please do make sure you go ahead and ask those questions in the Q&A tab so we can be able to get to them. I also want to remind you of that call from the UN. And again, Jimmy is going to share the link to the registration link for that one, so you can be able to go and pursue this call that the UN has put out, UNDP has put out for the creative industry And it's a very important one for us in this space because it becomes very important. Let me come to you, Rachel Bashabe at Verial Designs. Rachel is the founder and CEO of Verial Designs. It's an African print e-commerce store that focuses on creating modern, classy designs using bold, bright African print fabric. And I'm waiting to see a video. I'm hoping you're wearing one of your designs. Interestingly, you've been an accountant in the London Financial Business District for an asset management firm, and you're now running this business full-time, and you've now just suddenly started your own clothes line, and you're showcasing that in London, interestingly, of all places, and you've had some great partnerships there. If you don't mind sharing, Rachel, your transition from being an accountant. One of the things that I keep telling people, and I met an interesting gentleman about 4 or 5 months ago who works with our tax collector here in Uganda, the URA. And we're talking about all these passions and how, we get bogged down by the need to meet the bills and everything. And I couldn't help but get really saddened by the fact that this guy was one of the most brilliant people I had met. And yet he was sitting behind the desk, just printing and signing papers, which is not a bad thing because, it's paying the bills and all. But you could see he had much bigger ambitions and much bigger dreams, and he was a typical creative. How did you manage to break out of that mold to say, look, I'm an accountant, I'm working in London, I'm working on, the financial district and the big leagues and all of that, but I want to go and pursue my dreams. Where did you get the courage and the inspiration to make that switch in case someone who is watching, like Ariho and myself, has been told by their parents, no, the in thing now, you have to go and study procurement, and yet we know within themselves that they want to be something else as a creative. So how did you manage to make that transition?
Good morning, Ben. Thank you. My name is Rachel.
You are wearing one of your creations and it looks amazing.
Yes, I'm always wearing something African print. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning again from London. For me, I think, again, typical African Ugandan child, my parents literally wanted me to study what they would consider the industries that make sense, or the ones that give them light. And especially moving to London, my mom was like, what do you mean you want to just do any course? So I ended up doing accounting. I didn't study it first and foremost as well. I studied business management. Then one of my mentors literally mentored me to start into finance when I went for my internship. And that's how I joined the financial district in central London. With me, I think I've always known that I really pick up things very easily. So as I was doing my accounting, I always just felt like this is something I'm doing for my parents. So I think it's a mix of fate, God, and life. I was getting the good money because we all know accountants do get paid really well, but I wasn't very comfortable at the same time. And then I ended up experiencing personal issues with my health, and I had to stay at home. So one of those things of staying at home, I had to get creative about where do we get money. Can you hear me? Someone say I'm not clear. Perfect. So I had to get creative. Perfect. I had to get creative about where do we get money. But I then realized when you're in the creative industry, it's not about chasing the money. It's about what are you passionate about and what makes you want to wake up and keep doing it even when you're not seeing the beginning. Fun fact is my company only started last year, and this was because of COVID. Anyone who knows, I know right now Uganda is in lockdown. We had a very, very hard lockdown. And for people with health issues like myself, we were stuck indoors. I was stuck indoors for nearly a year. So I just got creative, used what's around me. I've always loved to express, and I love, love, love Uganda. And I think it's something that Ben and, I just have to go back again. Ben and Ariho mentioned before, when people look at the creative industry, they think, okay, yeah, Bakasiru or whatever. But for me, I was like, I love to stand out. I love fashion. But what's the one thing that is not saturated? People don't like wearing African print, especially Vitenji. We grew up thinking, oh, it's the boring stuff. So I played around with the idea of expressing myself, but not just expressing, making sure that it's sustainable and repurposed. So I made the lip to just be like, you know what, let me go for something that I love. I've already done what my parents want me to do. I've got the degree. I've given it to you. I've tried it out, and now I'm just going to go for what I love. And that's how I did the transition. I suppose also I have to be thankful that my parents were very open-minded. It wasn't easy convincing them. I mean, it was even up until recently when I got like a big fashion runway that my mom was like, okay, so people like the tinge. But until then, I would say you need to love what you're doing and you need to surround yourself with people that can see your vision and help you and collaborate with you as well. So yeah, that's how I can say my transition has been. It's not been easy, but it's been worth it, honestly.
Thanks, Rachel. It always is worth it, isn't it? At bare minimum, at least you're able to sleep in peace knowing that you're chasing your dreams. But also for you, you're really crafty because you've managed to remove the bill for buying clothes. I mean, if you're making your own clothes, at bare minimum, you've at least cut out that bill. So well done, kudos to you. Thanks, and we'll be coming back to you in a little bit as we, of course, get questions for you. Let me run over to Hamid Ibrahim. Hamid, thanks a lot for joining us. Hamid is a CG artist and has worked at the highest level of the visual entertainment industry in Hollywood. He's worked on blockbusters like The Lion King, Dumbo, The Predator, and Dolittle, and is using his experience to mentor upcoming artists as well, and has been featured on some of the biggest outlets in the world. Hamid, good morning, and thanks a lot for joining us. I wanted you to shed some light on a problem that we have, especially in Uganda. The idea that, of course, is being done in the context of Uganda at the moment. We have a big problem, and I'll come to the rest of the panel with this as well, starting with Ariho, and then David and the rest of the guys can chip in. The desire for quality and excellence. So a lot of our creatives and artists in Uganda and in the stuff that we do seem to still have a big challenge with being able to deliver quality. When you look at some of the stuff that we do, and again, you can use your perspective in terms of the graphics and design, you just get the feeling that maybe we are not up to scratch yet. How much of an opportunity is that for upcoming creatives to try and improve that and make sure that we raise the bar a little bit, if you don't mind, and also what your experience has been interacting with some of the Ugandan creatives. Good morning, Hamid. Welcome.
Morning, Ben. Thanks for having me. That's a very interesting question. I'll start by saying I'm gonna, let's say, update, because that's a very old profile. That's about 3 years old now. Sorry about that. But because that's where I started off from. And interestingly, I actually left the Hollywood kind of film industry level, like working for other people in that level, because I saw there was an animation that came out in Nigeria. It's called Malaika, and at that time I was working on The Lion King, and I was proud of it. I was like, oh yeah, there's some really, because it looked good, it looked cool, right? Because a lot of good animations come out, but not many of them are cool animations, right? They don't have that cool vibe to it. They don't have that cool vibe to it. And I remember showing it to my colleagues at that time who I worked with in the on the film, and they pretty much roasted it for about 2 weeks straight, right? And it was understandable why. Like, I saw all the mistakes, but I had the rose-colored glasses when I saw it the first time. And actually from then, I actually quit working in those kind of Hollywood level films. And I went into working, I started off a company with a few of my friends. Some of you might have had it. I started off Kugali with 2 other friends of mine. And just since then, I'll just update the profile. I know Kugali launched the first ever African comic book anthology. Then from there, that's when we got featured on BBC. And then we became an official Snapchat creator. That's in the augmented reality and virtual reality space. We're actually one of the top virtual reality creators in the world at the moment. And a lot of people who worked in our AR side right now, we employed them from Uganda. And what we did is we got them when they came in who had high interest, right? Because you cannot buy passion. They had the passion to do it. And that's one thing which is very easy to find in Africa, actually, in general, right? It's because there's not enough resources. So most people who get to a certain level of skill, you know, they really love doing what they're doing. So there's that thing we had there. So I just trained them up to be good enough. And right now they're working on some of the biggest brands. And then from there, the biggest announcement I did, again, with the theme of, I always try to make sure Africa is not a couple of years behind. Somebody mentioned that. And in the virtual reality, augmented reality space, we're making that happen. And also in the animation space, recently we just, and that announcement was made by Disney. We became the first company in history, not the first African, not the first Black, the first company in history to collaborate with Disney Animation Studio. We pretty much opened up that door. And a few people since then have walked through that door. Now, not collaboration yet, we're the only one who's collaborating at the moment. But that was like a big move for us, right? In that theme of trying to push Africa forward. So just to update that profile. And in terms of the challenges, from what you mentioned, I would say the quality, it comes twofold. It's a chicken and egg problem. When I came to Uganda in 2016, that's when I found this one very well. I was talking to a few people from there. I was born in Uganda, I moved to UK, and I decided not to go back for years, right? So this was 6 years of me in the UK without going back to Uganda. So 2016, I was there, and when I walked around in different animation studios and speaking to a few of the people there, I realized that most people, what happened was they're really good people. They would create their own studio. So it's like very segmented. So you'd find a person who's really good at this aspect, but he has his own studio. Somebody else is good at that aspect, their own studio, and they're not really collaborating. So that was one big problem I saw, right? And that kind of hinders the quality that comes through because most of the basic was scattered all over the place. That's one thing I noticed. Another thing I also noticed was just in general, you need the finances, you need the support to create something of really high quality. There is no way around that. And now on the other side, somebody's not going to give you finance and support unless you're of really high quality. So it became a chicken and egg problem where like there was no starting point. And I'm actually really happy to say, at least from Kugali's side, we know we have kind of created that starting point, which right now we know for sure that there are multiple projects getting funded in Africa on the film industry and animation industry, literally just because we opened up that door and we actually showed that you can actually create something of quality when you have some finances on your side. So there's that problem. It's getting solved. It's not completely solved, but I would like to, at least good news is for sure, there's going to be a big landmark shift in the film and animation industry in Africa in general. As I always say, I always make sure they mention Uganda when they're making any kind of press release, or when Disney did the announcement, I made sure they mentioned I'm from Uganda because my other two colleagues are Nigerian, and you know how loud that area tends to be. They really shut out the people. Uganda is a little bit more quiet, so I made sure I shut it out myself. So I'd say that would be just chicken and egg problem of the money coming in. That's one big one. Second one is it's too segmented, so people don't tend to get where they need to be. And actually the third one is most people stop at the skill level where they make money. They don't try and take over the whole world. So that's pretty much would be the things I say which are big challenges. And we are kind of doing something small in all of those areas to try and solve it at Kugali. It's one of our big goals, I would say.
Right. Thanks a lot. Let me come to you, Ariho. The thing that Ibrahim just touched on about when you mention Nigerians and mention Ugandans, well, it's a bit obvious, right? Because you can't miss a Nigerian. You can't miss a Nigerian in anything at all. How important do you think it is for creatives in Uganda to be able to position themselves? You're very big on branding, obviously. You've written a book about this. How critical is it for creatives to learn how to present themselves properly? Because that's the other thing that we struggle with. The Ogutus who insist on going to meetings in torn jeans when they know that they're going to meet people who might not take them very seriously just because you want to make that first impression. How important do you think it is to have that balance between being a creative and yet being able to present yourself in a way where, for example, now the world is taking the creative, very seriously, but maybe is it possible that one of the reasons that we were not taken too seriously is because of how we presented ourselves, and how do we draw that balance?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I think like from right from the start, and it's nice to meet you, Hamid. I mean, just listening to the stuff that you've done, I am not worthy to undo your laces. That's incredible stuff. But I think the whole thing of branding, whether it's personal branding or it's a business, it comes down to authenticity. I think there is something about Nigerians that they are very comfortable in their skin as opposed to people from our side of the continent. And I think it's really because we have lots of cultural mixes that come into what it is that we do. I always tell people that one of the greatest statements that influenced me was a line I picked up from the movie Enter the Dragon by Bruce Lee, who was going to fight some guy, and the guy pulled out a weapon and he told him that the weapon is the extension of the fighter. So if you're a bad fighter, you obviously won't do much with a weapon. So it just really comes out that everything we're doing still has a bit of an extension from where we come from and how we've been conditioned, and that is really affecting the way we project ourselves. But I'm really glad that like Hamid said, it's a case of saying you know, be comfortable in your skin, be happy to put what you have out there, and people will embrace it. I always like a statement one of the great preachers said, that if you set yourself on fire, the world will come to watch you burn. And I think that's what creatives need to do in terms of whether it's positioning themselves or branding themselves. It's find that thing that you do really well and set yourself on fire and wait for the world to come and watch you burn, as opposed to trying to present yourself to the world. Then they won't take you serious. Yeah. I don't know. I would like someone else to chime in here.
Yes, of course. And for the rest of the panelists, if you want to do that, feel free. Let me start though by bringing in David on this very particular point. You very well know, and again, from a creative perspective, especially in the Ugandan context, you have a lot of copy and paste, right? I think we all know, we've seen the stock pictures. You see something and you think, wait, I've seen this somewhere. You listen to a song and you think, that sounds very familiar. David, how, especially for the young people with us who are trying to get their ideas to life, how important is it for them to be very careful about not being, I don't know if I should say too lazy, to just go and plagiarize other people's ideas? Because eventually that ends up becoming a liability for you, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it's really important to be, again, true to yourself on what you're doing. But I'd just like to go back a little bit to the conversation that Hamid started, and around the limitations that we have as an industry that sometimes lead to this copy and paste mentality. I think there needs to be a way, and we try to do this at Kafunda, to find professionals who can do peer-to-peer education, people who have made it, hopefully people like Hamid, now that you know that I have you on my radar, we'll have a chat. But how do we get people to understand the science of creating? And it's a really important thing, because if you understand the building blocks that put certain things together, then it's much easier for you to do something original. So you normally say, for example, if you are a photographer, for example, the question here is, okay, fine. How do you decide that, this photograph is going to be from a worm's eye view, this one's going to be from a bird's eye view? What exactly are you trying to say by doing a tight shot on this photograph? What does it communicate? And unfortunately, that requires you understanding the science of creating and how people perceive certain things. Now, in an industry hugely driven by passion, a lot of people have been self-taught. A lot of people have learned the art, of doing these things. They've learned how to animate, they've learned how to move objects around, they've learned how to use the software, but they haven't learned the science and the history and the psychology of these things that are most ably taught in creative schools, that unfortunately in Uganda are either, one, not available for most of the creative practices, or not accessible for most in terms of the fact that they're too expensive. And so again, we're having a chicken and egg problem. You're going to find most producers will copy and paste a song because they do not know the hallmarks that build a song, right? And they haven't understood that science. And I think it's important for us to create platforms and avenues that help people understand that science of creating such things. But of course, also, there is the thing of, I keep saying the unfortunate bit about the place that we're living in is that you're always in competition with everything is in competition with your next meal. I mean, the people in the UK and the States and stuff like that have the safety net of credit and social protection, right? So even, as long as, your credit is a bit sensible, you can survive for a bit on the systems that are set up there. Here, most of us just say, look, I need to make the thing that's going to get me the next meal. And what we try to do at least I'll speak for Kafunda, because we are trying to solve that problem. Because we understand that, one, at the very least, you have to put money in someone's pocket first, right? Because we tried it before. We said, let's skill people and then have them, you know, go on and take on all this stuff. And often at time you found that people are just like, no, I want to do the thing that brings money now. And then we said, okay, fine. Is there a possibility for saying, if we put some money in your pocket, it won't be a lot, but if we put some money in your pocket from, you know, a certain class of jobs, then can we upskill you to, you know, get more valuable, more higher jobs? And I think that's the way that maybe we need to look at it, because of the context in which we are. Because it's very ridiculous for you to tell someone who is struggling to pay rent and you know, struggling to find a meal, that, hey, you know, do this really authentic thing. It might not work in the next 6-8 months, but you know, you'll be fine. I think we have to find a dual solution and saying, hey, there's this minimum, what we term as a minimum viable skill. How do we get to the minimum viable skill where you can produce work that is good work, but that can be a lot better, and that you can elevate to into a much, much bigger place. And I think that those two dualities of, one, understanding that there has to be a place, especially where professionals like Ariho and Hamid and people like that, who have gone before and have unfortunately most probably learned the science over 20 years of practice, because you probably never went to school, but you were lucky enough for things to work a certain way, can come back and make it much easier and much faster for this the creatives who are coming up to elevate on the science and not just the art of creating, but also to figure out a way to deal with the fact that you're always in competition with the person's next meal. Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing the stuff that you guys are sharing. I don't understand why on earth Kamara is insisting on calling us C grade students. Kamara, do you hear how brilliant all these guys sound? How dare you say that we are bottom of the class?
I'm an S student in physics and mathematics.
I said.
Our teachers just didn't know what they were doing, or who were way too clever for our education system. So I've got a question for the entire panel, and I'm going to ask all of you to feel free to chip in on this one. I'll give you a chance to mull over it while I come to Dennis for a moment. But the question is something that David has just touched on, right? In the creative space, we are literally usually treated again like the bastard child, right? People have no problem paying 400,000 shillings or $100, $120 for a dress that they have bought from some store on Oxford Street or somewhere in Dubai. But when Rachel or Rebecca creates a beautiful Ugandan dress like the one Rachel is wearing today, people are like, no, you can't charge me 200K for that. That's too much money, simply because it was made, you know, by Ugandan or whatever. How do we try and solve the challenge of people downplaying the value of what we do as creatives in Uganda? And it applies to literally every single space in terms of the creatives. So that's a question for the entire panel to think about and give the responses on after Dennis. For you, Dennis, you said something yesterday during our discussion for the World Youth Skills Day that caught my attention. It's something you've always been saying, I know, but something that might be worth highlighting. The fact that the way the world has been going, the rate at which the jobs are changing is almost impossible to keep up with. We all know what's happening in the US, and where Tesla is suddenly the most valued car company in the world, a company that didn't exist, you know, 10 years ago. The Fords and the Jeeps that have been in existence for 100 years are now playing catch up. How important, again, and I keep asking the question, how important for our young people to understand and be able to invest themselves in learning about this stuff, to try and foresee what's happening in the future, where we're going. Right now, we're doing this on a Zoom call, which Zoom, I honestly think the majority of us didn't know 2 years ago, right? And yet here we are, and how powerful it has become. What are some of the things that you're seeing in that space? I know you're very passionate about gaming. You talked about that. It's something that we've not seen in Uganda taking off at the level that it should, and yet it has potential. how do we make sure that we position ourselves to take advantage of things like that that are coming up in the future?
Thank you very much, Ben, and I've been enjoying listening to our fellow panelists. But you left them with a question to mull over. Perhaps I should add one as well. I've noticed, I couldn't help, but noticed that quite a significant number of them have lived at one point in the UK. It can't be coincidence. So what is it? Is it the environment outside of Uganda that has enabled you to juice up that level of creativity? Is it the ecosystem, the support system? Is it the inspiration that you get when you're out there? What is it? I have my own views, not that I'm a creative guy, but looking at the Kamaras, the Hamids, our fashionistas and all, there's something about, is it about exposure generally? For instance, if you went to Congo, would you come back as creative as you did if you went to the UK? So that's a question to mull over. But Ben, back to your question, in terms of the jobs of the future, and this is why really entrepreneurship skills, particularly creativity, is one of those most valued skills as an entrepreneur. And this panel could not be, this thematic session could not be any more important to articulate the need, the significance of not just the government, but all partners and players to really support this industry. Because everything that we're doing, whether you're an architect, it boils down to creativity. We were trying to do a project in Barara, and we were a bit stuck until I went with a friend of mine who's an architect. He came with a landscape designer, and you look, just having 1 hour with them, you know, giving you ideas of how this might look like, and then busy sketching it. And once the thing is on paper, you can begin to see. And the gaming industry is actually one of those interesting ones. I was reading a report about 1 or 2 years ago. That industry, I think about last year, was around $197 billion. And that shot through the roof during lockdown. One of the panelists was talking about lockdown. During lockdown, in the UK especially, the gaming industry shot up. Some of the interesting statistics were the sales of consoles also went up. But if you think about that industry, by the way, is projected to go to like $268 billion in about 2 years' time. But when you're playing a game, who has designed the game? You know, you have, let me just look here very quickly. You have game designers, so the people who design. I could just put down and design on way. So someone has to develop the software at the back, you know, computer programmers. So while you have someone who's creative, there's another job for a computer programmer who is going to make sure that if you're playing chess, if you move one left, right, these things actually happen. There's another guy who's supposed to animate and create the artists. They are audio engineers. All these guys are creatives. Someone mentioned, I think, Ben, at the beginning, that they are a writer. You know, they are interpreters and translators, game testers. Kingston University, where I went to and also helped somehow set up the Business Incubation Center, and Anglia Ruskin University, we had 2 incubators for, I think Anglia Ruskin University specifically was for gaming. It was part of the system that Sony uses for people to test games. Students basically sit and test games, and they get paid. Fixing all the bugs, identifying all the bugs, you know, technical support specialists. I could go on. And once the game is out, where is it sold? On digital platforms. And people are making a lot of money by having advertising within the games. It has to be sold, the game has to be sold. So that industry is huge. And yet, every one of us has within them this child that wants to play. And play takes all sorts of forms. Gaming doesn't have to be sitting on Nintendo. No, there are other aspects of gaming and gamification, which actually slips into business. So gamification is techniques of gaming being brought into business. Next time you go to shop at your local supermarket and they say, can you bring your card, and they give you points? You are playing a game, my friend. You don't realize, but you're playing a game. I remember working on a project where traffic lights, most of the UK people will actually be aware of this, where in some rural areas where the speed limits are supposed to be like maybe less than 40, 30, so that instead of putting a traffic light, they found actually that using smiley faces, if you're below the speed limit and you get a green smiley face, If you're above the limit, you get the sad looking red face. That actually changed behavior much more than putting a chitara, which is going to give you a ticket. Imagine. So gaming, gamification, or creativity, or this particular sector that we're talking about has a huge potential, not just to make people money, but to impact society, to do all sorts of things. So I'm really, I know that, for instance, some of this requires a lot of heavyweight investment, and maybe it's good that we have our partners at the UNDP. I think we need, if I'm not mistaken, we need like a center, a state-of-the-art space where, my brother from Kabale who wants to design this Chiga game that we used to play with stones and wants to see it on Xbox can actually come and make it happen. Where in that space, you have a network of the people that I've been talking about, the game designers, all this. And in that space, by the time the guy goes back to Kabale, the game is live on Xbox and people are playing it. I'd love to see such a center, but it takes a lot. You need super fast internet. You need very powerful machines. I remember our Anglo Ruskin incubation center. You're looking at close to £1 million worth of equipment, just equipment alone, not to mention the technical skills and expertise that you're going to need. So maybe my rallying call would be to carry on having these discussions with our development partners, perhaps have an ecosystem approach involving other stakeholders like government, Ministry of ICT and others, and have a center in Kampala, because not everyone here can walk into Swang's Avenue and get their recording done. Not everyone can walk into Nomad advertising and get their branding juices melted. I know Kamara very well. He will send you a bill and you might run off from here. So I suggest we have a center somewhere that is going to bring the cost of doing this down, that is going to be a center where all these people who are creative can actually amalgamate and do something creative for Uganda. Over.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. And you see, which brings me to my question then now that I wanted to come to. And I'll start with you, Lukman, and then we can come to the rest of the panel with Rebecca and Hamid and Rachel. Why is it that if I go to buy a car in the bond here in Uganda, because we buy second-hand cars mostly, that there's going to be very little room for negotiation because you know what the value of that car is? If I go into a supermarket to try and buy a kilo of sugar, that kilo of sugar is sort of set and there's no room for negotiation. And yet when someone comes to you, Lukman, and says, I want to shoot an advert for my company, I want to design a poster for something that I'm doing. They want, to buy a dress from Rebecca's store. They want to hustle you and push you so far down because they think that maybe, I don't know, is it because we are charging too much, which is not true? How do we get people, how do we get the value of what creatives do to be appreciated? This is a question for the entire panel. I can see, David, you're wincing your eyes because you've probably been struggling with this. It goes back to the thing of competing with your next meal, right? So starting with Lukman and going around the rest of the panel, how do we get people to appreciate the value of what creatives do and be willing to pay for it?
Lukman left the chat. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, I hadn't noticed. Well, since you're on, then why don't you take over?
Oh, okay. So here's what I think. I think that Ugandans generally, we have a culture of not supporting each other. I think that it's maybe that thing that Kamara mentioned about having many cultures. Basically, we'll treat a white person better in a restaurant than we'll treat our own. So there's this culture of just sabotaging ourselves, and I think it's very culture. Maybe that's where it comes from, even our politics. So that's part of the problem. But beyond that, I think that people do not understand what creatives do. They haven't, it's an onus on us to really explain to our market that, you know what, this is actually what it takes to be able to produce work. I face this a lot with my work as an influencer or as a digital manager for brands. I have to take them through through the process and say, I'm doing work for like 7 people. I'm a copywriter, then I'm going to photograph. Then, so when you break it down like that, people understand, and now they feel like your work is valuable. So that has helped me increase my rates when I explain to people that, look, this is what it takes for me to actually do that work. And Ben, you've been mentioning a lot about how creatives for a long time have not been taken seriously and things like that. I honestly think that a lot of it has to do with the seasons. Why our parents were on our necks to go and study the sciences, and why the president probably up to today is still stuck and thinks the arts don't make sense, is because at the time most of us were born, the people that were making it were the scientists. And now with tech, you know, human beings work has been simplified so much. Like, you don't really need an accountant, you know, you can use QuickBooks. You don't really need a designer, you could use Canva. So the machines have automated most of the technical skills. And now we are in an era where, you know, creativity is being realized as the highest form of intelligence. And, you know, someone can go to Canva to design, yeah, but it takes an extra special creativity to be able to formulate good work. So now we are moving into that era. Of course, as here in Uganda, it's late, you know, but we are late. But the good thing with being a third world country is you can see trends trickle down to us. So just as creatives and as people, we have to continue to educate our market on why our work is important, with hope that, you know what, things are going to trickle down, and one day people are going to wake up and realize that it's a matter of time, that, you know what these guys have been saying this whole time is right. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thanks a lot. Any other thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, can I go next?
Okay, cool, no worries.
Right, let's go with Rachel, and then we'll come to you, David, and then everyone else.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really have the biggest advice on this. As a creative who's still very new in this industry, I would literally like to urge everyone, especially Ugandans, as much as we all know that West Africans have dominated the creative space, especially for Africa, one thing that I recently realized or got from the exposure that I've been working with John Lewis, for example, in the last few weeks when we were in the store, people are looking for the rest of Africa. People are looking within East Africa. Now, we need to remember, as creatives, do what you like, but use the inspiration of your country. Now, most of my designs, the Vitengis, are inspired by Uganda. Either the Baganda, because I am both a Muganda and a Munyankore. So creativity for me comes from where I come from, what my culture has taught me. I grew up in Uganda for 20 years, and seeing that people are actually, the market wants fresh ideas. As creators, we have so many ideas, and you have to really be able to stand out by putting that idea and making it very unique to you. Now, when it comes to the money thing, I know, as Rebecca said, Ugandans, we have a tendency of, we don't support each other, and we tend to think our stuff is lesser quality than. But I would like to urge you to know that when you do your own original ideas and you literally put your heart and soul in it, people start seeing it. I got approached by John Lewis just by putting that idea out there on my website, and then people found me. Then after that, I then got found with the latest achievement I did with the London Fashion Week. Anyone who knows London Fashion Week, it's very coveted. But for people to actually say, what is the inspiration behind your ideas? And I'm like, it's about Uganda. It's about my culture. It's about the things that I've grown up with, but not even just that, going further into the Vitenji. And someone did stress, do your research. Why are you trying to get into the industry that you're going into? How can you demarcate yourself from everyone else? And please, I implore everyone, as hard as it sounds, there's always a market for you. Even if you think you're not being paid what's worth, because I've had this at the very beginning where I was like, oh my God, are my prices high? Money enough? No, people will pay, and the right people and the right audience will pay. You just have to. As Ugandans, we're very, very much, we've been raised to be very humble, very quiet. And I think we need to be as strong as West Africans. West Africans will force their idea on you in a very nice way of they stand out. So for me, that's one thing I've learned with my experiences with all these big brands, and then realizing that you don't need to fight. Your creativity will fight for you. Seeing people pronounce Nyankore names or Luganda names or different cultural names with my collections around the world is so amazing to see. So I would implore every single person, have your idea, stick to it, but be very unique. And if possible, as Dennis has said, don't do it alone. You don't necessarily have to be the creative designer, the illustrator, the web developer. There's people who you can collaborate with, and you have to actually be willing to work together. Obviously, if there's circumstances where you can't pay for it, there's grants, there's people willing out there. You just have to put yourself out there. The problem we have as Ugandans is we do things half-heartedly. And I think Rebecca has said this a lot on her platform. Please stop, put yourself out there. Even when you're not feeling well, slowly your community will understand you. They will pay for you. They will ride for you. And I can't even express it anymore. And we're in the digital era. I don't understand why people are very afraid as creatives not to get online. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. Put yourself out there. You will love it as a creator. It's challenging, but I mean, we're used to challenges at the end of the day.
I know, right? And out of curiosity, what are some of these names in the collections that are giving Bazungu trouble? I'd love to hear some of them.
So one of them is Bayingano.
Wow.
Yeah. The second one is Chomhendo. So,
wow.
So I really just think outside the box. I've used names like Namutevi, I've used names like Nambi. So it's kind of like also teaching people our culture. I mean, even like some of the things that the material like the Kikoi, people not understanding what is behind it. Or when I do like some of these dresses where it's flopped with the gomesi, but trying to keep culturally to the theme, but also teach the world that Africa is not West Africa. There's sections, there's Uganda. We need to be loud and proud. It was amazing to be in John Lewis, people walking up and they're like, hey, that's Kampala. Wow, okay. Things like that. So let's not be afraid to be who we are just because we think the market is saturated. The market is so vast, honestly.
No, I absolutely hear you. Thanks a lot. David, let's come to you and then we'll go to Hamid and then to Ariho, and then we can go to our Q&A and open up the discussion.
Yeah, so why are creatives sometimes undercut? I think for a lot of industry, their value is easy to quantify. If you are an architect, engineer, there is a building, you know, someone sees a building, all right? And so it's very easy for the layperson to pick up and understand on. But with a lot of creative things, especially with in the fields in which we are being hired and the fields that make money, fields like advertising, there is a need to prove some ROI, to prove that the graphic you're putting out or the video you're putting out and stuff like that is going to create actual movement in this person's business and stuff. And you know, Ariho, they say that Ariho charges an arm and a leg, you know, but because he has learned how to prove ROI, he has learned to tell his customers, look, if I do this piece of artwork for you, from my experience, I know how this works, and this is the kind of value that is going to come to your business, okay? And therefore, as individual creatives, and this is where I talk about the science, because it's really, really important. As individual creatives, it's important not to just learn graphic design or film or these things. And look, you don't have to be an expert on them because you can hire or partner with people who can help you prove these things. But it's important to understand value. Because what you're selling is not your film, is not your graphic design, is not your copywriting, it's value, you get? So when someone comes to you and says, I want you to create for me a website as a creative, your first question should be like, okay, you know, what are you trying to achieve with this? You know, what for me as a creative is going to act as valuable to you when I put this piece out? I think that's what's missing a lot, because a lot of us don't understand the science. We cannot articulate the value that we bring to, and therefore, if you show me value and you say, okay, this is the value I'm giving you, this is how much that value is worth, and that's why you're paying me this amount of money, a lot of people just be like, oh, either pay for it or walk, because they can't afford it. And so it's the thing that advertising agencies have hacked, because those are creative entities, right? They create advertising, they create these things, and entities like the Swang's Avenues of this world have hacked how to tell people, look, if Swang's creates for you an ad, we've created, you know, 45 viral ads, and we know what makes an ad worth listening to. All right. So, you know, if you're going to come to us, you're going to pay our premium price, because you understand that, you know, we know what captures people's ears. We understand the science of these things. And therefore, we as creatives have to learn how to articulate our value. We have to learn, because it's what we're selling. We're selling value. If you can't attach value to your work, then it's going to become hard for someone else to pay for it if they can't see it. And the sad thing is, a lot of creatives amongst themselves will be able to understand that value. The sad part about the world is not many people have the lens to be able to see the world like that, you see. And therefore, as a graphic designer, as a filmmaker, you have to say, okay, I'm doing for you this ad, it's 45 seconds, and here is how this is going to affect the bottom line, because I have done this research, I know this is how I'm going to track it, these are the things that are going to happen. And if we can do that, then it's going to be impossible for someone to come and say, you know, no, I won't pay you that amount of money for that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There's actually, you just talked about that. I'm in the middle of one of those. It's also very interesting. There's a whole different discussion about balancing between what the client needs, what they want, and what they think they want. You know, especially if you look at it from the perspective of, say, advertising, and how everyone wants to put 25 paragraphs in a quarter-page advert that no one is ever going to read, and yet they insist on doing that. But that thing you talked about in terms of value, I can very briefly share a personal story before we go to Hamid, and then hear from Kamara as well. So one of the things I do is I am an MC, an event host or moderator, if you want to call it that. And one of, I think, I would like to brag a little bit and say maybe one of the top 5 in the country at the moment. And so I do highly specialized events, right? So I learned a long time ago that there is no point in me just doing every event that is available for whatever value is available, because someone is saying, Ben, we want you to come and do a gig. We're giving you, you know, our budget is 500K. I go to a point where I say, you know what? I know what I'm able to do for events, and this is my value. This is how much money I'm charging. And if you're not willing to pay it, it's okay. Find someone else, right? I'm not going to do that. If you think that you want me to do your event, there's got to be a certain value for it. So I did an event for one of the very, you know, big companies, organizations in Uganda for a year. And I was very adamant about my charges at the time. I don't charge little money for these events. And somehow the boss at this organization insisted that they wanted me, because they'd seen me do an event, and they were very insistent on having me as the host for this event. And of course, we did the event. It went very well. Everyone was very happy. It's an annual event. The following year, they decided to get someone else to do it, because they said, Ben is too expensive. And what happened is that the year after that, they came back and said, we learned our lesson. We would like to come back to you. And of course, now that I knew that they knew my value, I doubled my price, which they paid. And that's been the rate going on since. So I do hear you when you talk about value and how important it is to be able to stick to that. Though I guess I have the benefit of being able to find other ways of, you know, competing with my next meal, like you said, David, which might not be the case for many other people. Over to you, Hamid. You're in a space where you're commanding the big bucks, obviously. What advice would you give to Ugandan creatives in being able to command fair value for their services and what they do? And then we'll hear from Kamara and then open up the Q&A session.
Well, thanks, Ben. That's a really good story. I love that story. That's amazing. From my side, in terms of commanding the big bucks, I'd say, because the original question was just, most people in Uganda don't want to buy things from Uganda, from back home, as they say, right? And we encountered that, like in the beginning, even I think most of our market was the US. Obviously, we set off as a comic book industry, right? That's in terms of Kugali itself. Me in my personal career, obviously, I went straight into film, and that Hollywood side, there's only one direction you go, that in that side. But in terms of the first ever things I was selling, when we're trying to sell to Africa, it was very challenging, right? And it's a thing of, it's a two-way street, where from your side, let's say the challenges you encounter trying to sell to Africa, what you would do is try and find a way to meet that market where it is, because some things are different. For example, how you'd sell a comic book from in any country in Africa is very different from how you sell a comic book in US. US is a comic book culture there. Whereas in Uganda, there's no real comic book culture there. So I would say my advice would actually be an interesting one. So if somebody's not seeing your value where you are and you want to do that thing, I would say go to where your value is seen. I'll give you guys a really good example here in terms of in the augmented reality space. I actually spoke to a few people because I was in Uganda. This was 2018 now, I think. And I was speaking to a few people about, I wanted to do some augmented reality stuff for them, right? Let me try and see if I can turn one on right now. Actually, give me a second. So if you guys saw my mask from before, this is an example of AR. So it's tracking with my face, but as I talk, you can see it's the character moving over there. And it was just to do something like that for some people, right? And I was met with that thing of, oh, this is cool, but and they didn't want to pay me the price which was there, which was not that high because we were just testing the concept. And on the other side now, when it comes to like Snapchat, at the moment for that exact same thing, which we're trying to convince people to do for us here, they came to us to do it for them. And the price was about, I'd say, over 2,000% more than the other side, like a ridiculous amount, right? Like it was just like, compared to what we were planning to charge the other side, this side was much more expensive. And this side, they came looking for us. And I see that over and over again, where I would say some regions value certain things very differently. And I would say, I would not blame the customer. I would say, you try and adapt to them. That's one way you win. You cannot be like, yo, customer, you have to come eat my food. It's the best food. You have to find out to convince them that's the best food and they come through. You have to sell it. As you said, right? You have to understand this. You have to understand how they think, and you present it to them in a way they're going to consume it and understand exactly what you mean. You cannot speak to the, let's say, US audience or even UK audience the same as you speak to a Ugandan audience, right? You get different results from that. And then in terms of, you said something about in the UK, whether there's something different about the UK. I would say in my case, it was just the fact that because I came from Uganda to UK, I was 18 years old when I moved here. And it was that all of a sudden change of everything is now different. And because of that, you're almost forced to think differently when you come here. And that kind of puts you in that path where you have to do things, right? And you see the options in front of you. And there's a lot more people you see who are doing more things out there. And as you see these people doing these things, you're like, I'm actually in this country where people are doing this. Let's say down the street, like a few couple, let's say, in that same town you're in, you know there's somebody there who is doing that and making a ton of money. Whereas in Uganda, you don't have that frame of reference. I often say that when I was back in Uganda, I never even knew people made the films. Like somehow, I never thought about somebody actually makes that film. It would just kind of appear in front of me, right? But when I came here is when I got that realization that people actually make this. And I went down that path. And it's a thing of just exposure of, it kind of demystifies these people, right? Like the first time I met, one of my lecturers had worked on The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, right? And those are one of my favorite films. And it kind of, me meeting him kind of demystified that thing of, this guy is just another human being. I can actually get to that. And that was a very big thing. So it's just, it's a double thing, right? The first one is just, one, you almost have to be different when you come here, especially because we didn't come here like a lot of money. I came here to join my mom. I remember when I came here, we first lived, that's the one thing people you cannot realize. Like my bedroom I'm in right now is the size of room we lived in, me, my mom, and my little sister. At that time, she was 2 years old, right? We lived in that tiny room, right? Just all three of us for like a couple of months, right? And it was that thing of like, you're going there. And then in terms of the money and kind of building up to get the money to be able to do what you want to do, I would say you should have some sacrifice as well. In that, I remember the first time when I left the company, like FTC, paying me really well. A couple of months in, the savings are disappearing. Savings go much faster than you actually think. That's a funny thing. The savings disappeared very quickly. And then I remember for 2 months, the first month, I was pretty much eating rice and eggs and ketchup, right? That was like my food for like a whole month, right? But I knew, I was like, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice this for this period of time because I know I need to build up to this to get there. And that small sacrifice in that period of time, because allowed me to grow my skill to a level where I could negotiate a higher price. So it's like, if I think about my whole career, it's like just a few key moments, like a few things I did differently. Another thing I did differently was also just in terms of, because I used to go to University of Hertfordshire, and I got a job in London. I was working in security in London. And because I'm a student, I'm broke. I'm not gonna take the train, it's too expensive. I took a bus, and the bus ride was about 2.5 hours, 2 and 4, right? So about 5 hours journey. And in that bus journey, that's when I learned how to code. And that was literally one of the biggest things that allowed me to kind of move into the creative field in a very unique way, in that you have the technical skill and the creative skill at the same time, and give me that unique advantage there. So it's just little moments where you do things where you know most people are not going to be able to do them. And I think the ability to start thinking like that kind of comes in the situation where you're in a position where everything is new. The roads look different. Everybody speaks weird in the first couple of times. You smile at somebody, they're looking at you like you're crazy. Like, it kind of changes the way you think, like, maybe I need to do things differently. And that kind of evolves all the way through. So that's what I would say. At least from my experience, that's a very personal thing, no data here at all.
I know that the data is in the story, Hamid, and it's a really insightful story, and thank you for that. And I want one of those masks. You've got to make one for me, man. I want one of those.
Well, one of these ones, the Kugali ones.
Oh, look at that. I hope everyone can see that. That's great. That's cool. Kamara, oh, look at that.
Yeah, you can even switch it up. This is one of our comic book characters. Now, obviously, you can see it tracks pretty well. You can get the comic book on the website. So yeah, we kind of do a few of them and many more other things. If you go check on our website, you'll be able to see them.
Yeah, man. Respect. I see that the Rasta man. That's really cool, Hamid. Thanks a lot. Kamara, let's hear from you, and then we'll come to Dennis briefly before we open up the Q&A section.
Well, Hamid's story is not different from mine, and Dennis, you know my story very well. Yeah, there's a friend of mine who made a joke, and it was quite interesting. He said, people say that water is life, but it almost killed me because I was stacking it in the shelves of Tesco. But like what you've said is that you get your eyes opened to a different world. I used travel time to study. I did about 3 jobs at one time. But one thing that I must say that London Gig did for me was the appreciation of time. I mean, you don't have room to explain what your uncle did, what your auntie did. You either give the results or you have nothing in the bank. So for me it was that, and coming back here really it was easy to plug in. I needed to learn what the rules were and then just apply myself like I had in an environment that wasn't merciful to me. And I think that went well. But just to touch on the thing that so to summarize the London Gig, really, Dennis, your question, I would just put it in 2 words. Abagenda bareba. When you move, you see, and when you see, you learn. But the thing about Ugandans not buying, and then the whole thing of people negotiating to the basement value, I think that until the lion really learns to tell his story, the hunter will have the best tales. That I think we haven't told our story, and I'm really, really excited about what Rachel is doing. That until you tell your story, people won't understand the value that you're bringing. For example, if you give me I have a piece of art that was drawn by my daughter when she was 2 years old. I still have it in the wardrobe somewhere here, and she was trying to draw a giraffe, and I have seen some amazing art pieces of giraffes. But to me, because that tells a more compelling story than what an distinguished painter would do, I would value my daughter's artwork over another fine artist's artwork. It's because there is a story in that. So we need to begin to tell our stories like the Nigerians have, through their films, through their, whatever. They have used everything to tell their story and assert themselves. I think we need to get people like Lukman, people like Hamid, Rebecca. What she's doing is amazing with the podcast and putting our story out in cyberspace. I would really love to connect with you, Rachel, and you're doing amazing stuff. I just used to walk by John Lewis. So it's really the whole thing of, can we tell our story and then get people to appreciate the process so that then they attach value. I think David really handled that very well, that people are accustomed to paying for products. So for example, when I tell you that it's we're going to do a logo, people are thinking, okay, the logo is the output. They are not looking at the process, the input, the thought, the whole thing that bringing this whole thing together, and it's just not a piece of artwork. It's not something that I do for 3 minutes, but there's 20 years of learning the craft. There is a couple of hours of thinking and strategically doing a discovery for your business in order to give it this look that is going to be defining for it. So because people are really attached to products, and we've been products people, when you get people into a space where they need to place value on process, which is intangible, then they don't want to pay the value of an intangible. But when they can quantify it and hold it, then it makes it easier for them to pay. So I just feel like that's really my take. I think it's been really handled very well, and yeah, thank you.
No, I'm amazing. And so there's a lot of key lessons to pick from here. Hamid talked about your value, take your value where it is needed. And I think he's probably just demonstrated perfectly well how important it is to get value. All of us want that mask, right? It seems like it doesn't make any sense, but I'm sure everyone on this call would be willing to pay some money to have that mask. He's created something that we didn't know about until today, but all of a sudden you're thinking, I want that thing, right? And it shows you how important and powerful it becomes. Bana was also asking a question, and I'll push that to the Q&A section when we get to that. But Bana was asking about the issue of value, and sometimes, especially in Uganda, it's difficult for clients maybe to be willing to pay money because of the quality of the product and service that is maybe on offer at times, but that is something definitely to mull over. I've also seen a question from someone in Bunyoro talking about especially the music industry, and how people think that in Uganda, if you sing in a language that's not Luganda, you're not going to be able to make money. But I think maybe that has been demystified in a way. Again, it's about how you present yourself. We all remember Tinda Tine and how she became a national sensation. She was singing in a language that is almost impossible to sing in. Singing in Runyankore is very, very difficult. But someone like her and Tony, what's his name, Tonix, I think, have been able to do that. And you have, people once in a while being able to break through. So the question, I guess, becomes, how do you get to that space where you can be a Tinda Tine? How do you become a Tonix? How do you do what Hamid is doing to create things that will capture people's attention? And for that question, I want to come to you, Dennis, to take care of that. In terms of helping young people become creative, what do you see that looking like? I also want to remind everyone as Dennis comes on, and then we'll get into a Q&A section. Please, so go to the Q&A and put your questions there. Just a reminder that the UNDP has recognized very, very strongly how important creatives are. The government of Uganda, and I know someone talked about how the government doesn't seem to care. I think we can all agree that that has changed now, for whatever reason, right? We all know that the government is now paying a lot more attention to the creative. You're seeing a lot of things happening in that space. And so the UNDP has come in to support this space and say, we're going to throw our behinds behind, the creative space and do something about it, which is why you have this call from the UNDP. If you go into the chat, and I'm going to ask Brian to just, every 2-3 minutes, just throw that link in the chat for people to be able to go and register for this UN call for the creative, so they can be a part of that. So speaking of that, Dennis, our young people and how they can be creative, and then we'll dive into our Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Ben. First and foremost, Hamid, we need that mask. Absolutely cool.
How much are you going to be paying for it?
That's a very interesting discussion to have, Ben. That's a very interesting discussion. But back to your question, Ben, how do you make young people creative? Actually, young people are born creative. Everyone is born creative. I remember watching a video by Sir Ken Robinson. Any creative must have watched this. He argued that we are born creative and skills actually kill our creativity. The stories that Ndugu Kamara was talking about, I think even Rachel mentioned about this. Our parents insisting that we must get qualifications in these particular areas, only for once you've graduated to realize that the passion is actually here. But then you go back to, and this is interesting that the vast majority of the panelists have actually lived and worked in the UK. You are exposed to environments, and somehow the opportunities, they allow you to be who you are, who you were meant to be, who you want to be, and you can actually change. I wouldn't be surprised now if Rachel moved, let's say, from fashion and went into something completely different, like jewelry, just focused on jewelry, African jewelry. And why not? So we are, young people are very creative, but often they go into academic institutions where the path has been very clearly laid out for them. And I don't think our education system has changed much, which is why our NASE's approach to co-curricular education, what we're saying is carry on and do your fine art, carry on and do your business studies, carry on and do agriculture, carry on and do carpentry. But let's work alongside what you're doing, give you these other skills that help you to be creative. I mentioned yesterday, I think, about some of the students when they do their, when they display their products at the expo, you know, the process that the student goes through, and all of you likely are graduates. Imagine when we were graduating, Ben, I don't recall that we had these opportunities where you were told to actually go and come up. I know, Ben, you did information technology, if I'm not mistaken. What a waste. What a total waste. But of course, at the time, we were all looking at the future. The future is technology, blah, blah, blah. But look where you've ended. Yet me knowing you the way I do from senior one, that you've always been a presenter, a DJ. This is what you've always wanted to do. So 3 or 4 years wasted completely. But I imagine if there had been an option to do this thing parallel to your IT college, your IT degree, and so on and so forth, very many students will leave university and meander into the world of work without ever having had an opportunity to come out. So we are providing a platform for young people to play about with some of these ideas. And the idea is another fantastic example, as explained by how many people actually signed up. That the vast majority of them are indeed university students and even secondary school students. That if you are out there and you feel that there's something you're passionate about, whether it is in tailoring. Yesterday, the gentleman from BRAC was talking about their daughter during lockdown asked to be taken to be trained around sewing, and they bought a sewing machine. Now she's busy doing all sorts of clothes for the whole family and selling them to friends, you know. So let's encourage our young people. I think also at an individual level and at the family level, parents have a role to play to allow our young people to play, to be creative. The creativity that we're talking about, the stuff that Hamid has been showing, we know that in about 10, 20, 30 years, our kids are going to be showing something that is insane. We probably won't have this laptop, we won't have this screen, we'll probably be in some VR experience with the creativity. It's just incredible. So I would like to also make a rallying call for young parents who are in here. I know that Uganda is one of the youngest populations in the world, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are very many parents actually on the call that let your kids play about, watch what they are doing. What are they interested in? Support them. There's lots of musical schools for music, sports. Someone asked actually whether sports is in creativity as well. And I think it depends on what you're doing in sports. Sports is huge. You have athletics, you have football, you have all sorts of things. But back to gaming, talking about sports being in creativity, you guys will have been seeing Xbox football tournaments, you know, people packing like a stadium as big as Wembley to watch on screens, other kids playing against each other on Xboxes, you know, and people actually pay to sit in those audiences. It's now a profession. People sit down and are playing professionally, professional football or professional other games. And it's real. People actually get into teams. There's the whole payroll. There are celebrities around this. So I would encourage parents to trust their child within their child and let people just get on with their lives. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much. Dennis, I should actually point out, when I was GM at Kwese in 2019, we had the rights for the, what did they call it? The E-World Cup, I think. So the gaming football World Cup as if. And I remember the kid who won that got $1 million. So you've got a kid taking $1 million for playing video games. And I'm thinking, what on God's good earth is that? So it shows you the potential there is to be creative. Wow, how powerful these sessions are turning out to be. And of course, hopefully they're being inspirational for you. Let's get into your Q&A. Lots of questions coming through. I'm going to try and run through them, and then we'll see if we can pass them to the different panelists. And of course, for the panel, please feel free, if you feel you can be able to get to a question, take it on, please do that. The first question, which I will specifically give to David, not because he is mentally unwell, but because I know the stress of a creative and what you have to deal with, is from Nicole Lawino. And she says, first of all, this is beyond epic. That's good to know. She's also asking, can we talk a little bit about mental health amongst African creatives and how do we cope? Because that's obviously a very big thing for creatives. You can literally run mad between the 2 hours, sleep and all of that. What do we do with that? Charles Rwanga is talking about what do you think could be the biggest challenge in creating demand for the products? Because like, as you've heard from many panelists, sometimes our products are not very well known to people and it takes a bit of time to educate them. How do we go about doing that without too much money? And he talks about a story of someone he saw who makes fabric from banana stems and makes cloth from it. And the problem was that he couldn't process all the raw material available, which is, I guess, what the ideathon is about, for them to be able to get these ideas and bring them to pass. But how do we overcome those sorts of challenges? Someone is asking, how relevant is innovation to the art industry and what does the future look like, especially for the art industry? Because that's a very interesting part of the creative industry there. Timothy is asking, do creatives cut across? Because his idea, he says, is in the construction field, but it's got something new in terms of the finish. I don't see why not. I think, Timothy, rather, I can answer that for you. Absolutely. You know how passionate we are. Dennis here is yet to finish construction of his mega mansion. I'm sure he'll be looking for someone to make it as creative as possible and do things with it. So I don't see why you'd not want to do something about that. Oscar is asking about the government not giving too much attention to creatives in the country. Maybe Dennis will deal with that later because obviously, like we've said, they are doing something about it now. The UN is doing something about it now. You've got the link in the chat. You can be able to go and register. Christian in Nigeria, he's saying upscaling skill sets in our common domain has become difficult and also exorbitant. And he says that the young person is faced with critical needs of survival, which I think is what David was talking about, competing with your next meal. And he's asking, how can we practically live in our newest version in the new world that we're in, where our competence doesn't get outdated and we are still able to try and catch up with the trends? And then this is again from Oscar. You're asking about the government and is there any way we can force the government to pay attention to creatives? So those are some of the questions coming through at the moment. We'll start with you, David, especially on the issue of mental health for creatives, and then the rest of the panel can feel free to, just raise your hand and dig in and answer any of the questions that might have stood out for you.
All right, thank you very much, Ben. Shortly before I get into the mental health question, I'd just like to, I did a disservice by really not introducing what Kafunda Creative does. And I've just been, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about has come from, what we're trying to do as an organization. But what we do is we skill, tool, and grow top creative talent and try to connect them to valuable work. We're building Africa's biggest collection of freelance creatives, and that's really focused in the visual arts industry, so photography, film, animation, illustration, and we do a bit of copywriting, and we lean a lot towards the content creation aspect and the commercial aspect of that creation. So you can just go check us out at kafundacreative.com. If you're creative, please sign up. Last year we managed to do work that paid out about 65 million shillings to freelance creatives during the pandemic. So there is a demand for this. We are hoping to grow that a bit more, as time goes by. But let's talk about mental health as a creative. And this is a huge thing to unpack, and we don't have nearly enough time. But the first thing is, I think you need to learn, and it's a very difficult thing to do, but as creatives, because of how personal our work is, every bad review, bad critique, someone saying, no, I won't buy that, and all these things is taken very, 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 very personally. And there is a need, I don't want to use the word divorce yourself from your work, but there is a need to build a Chinese wall between your personal value and the products that you put out there. Because if someone says no to you, that is not a depiction on who you are as an individual. You get, they say no because they don't want the product. They say no because they're not the right target audience. They could have said no for a lot of reasons and not necessarily because you as an individual have done something wrong. And therefore there is a need not to tag the output of your work onto your personal individual value. I think that's important. But also another thing that, you know, is horrible for mental health of creatives. Look, I mean, we can want to paint it how we want, but it's very hard to have good mental health when you're broke. And so, you know, because there are a lot of things that money will solve for you that now become pressures if you don't have that money. And therefore it's important that, again, you go back and look. My encouragement to creatives is you need to go back and stop looking at yourself just as a photographer, just as a creative, and just because that stuff is very hard to make money from, and look at yourself as someone who can use that skill to add value and then start selling that, all right? And there's a higher likelihood that you're going to make money in that regard. So, I mean, those are the two things I'd share that, you look, it's important for you to understand your craft so well that you're making money from it. But also it's important for you to not attach the value of your product to your personal value, because those two things are not the same.
I don't think there's
Ben, you're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, me being the villager coming out there. Thank you very much. Very well said. I don't know whose hand is up. Hamid, yeah, Hamid, your hand is up. So you go next.
Cool. I'll just I'm about to leave, by the way. Just have 2 minutes left in here. So I'm just gonna say, in terms of the mental health thing, I do agree in detaching the value of who you are to the value. I'd say in general, don't attach the value of who you are to anything other than who you are as a person. Like that, because if you think into it, right? Let's say even your hands, even your body is not you, right? Your body is just a part of you. So just say, just in general, as I say, like it's not a good idea to attach who you are and your value of how you value yourself based on what you do. I'd say remove that from that, because in one or two things happen. If things don't go well, definitely going to have some issues with your own self-esteem. If things go well, your ego is going to be too big. So it's like you never win if you do that. And just in conclusion, I know I'm going to head off. And I put in my Instagram handle, that's Hamid Ibrahim Portfolio. I always reply to people who are telling me for mentorship like that. I always reply, but I'm going to be honest. You have to do most of the work than me doing most of the work. If I feel like I'm gonna do most of the work, I will not do it. Just being honest there. But it's really, I'm really honored to be on this panel. It's been amazing. I think most of you should have my contacts on the panel. For the audience, again, Hamid Ibrahim Portfolio. Just remember message there on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, that's gonna be a tough one. I would say Hamid Ibrahim Assistant, and then that will go to my assistant and she'll try and sort through that. assistant@gmail.com. That's an email to go through to try and get to me. Again, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Hamid. Yeah, if you don't have Instagram as a young person, like, what are you doing as a creative, right? Which is one of the things I guess you need to fix. You've got to be relevant in the times. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Let's move on. Which of our panelists wants to go next? Kamara, you wanna go next?
Yeah, let me just, I mean, you talked about mental health. I think creatives, and I mean, David talked about it. The whole thing of being too attached to what you do is the biggest hindrance even to growth. If you realize most creatives have that problem, that when your work is not given the rating that you think it should have, then you begin to feel like you're not worth much. But it's just really detaching yourself from that. But I think any creative worth their salt has come through the ranks of being critiqued for everything that they put out, and they should really welcome that as feedback. It's Zig Ziglar who says that feedback is food for champions, right? So for you to get better at what you do, you need to be really handling that feedback really, really well. Where does the mental health issue come in? It's I think largely it's caused by the disconnect or the gap between what you're really passionate about and what people are willing to pay. You know, there are those three circles, the Venn diagram. They talk about if you're doing something and no one is willing to pay for it, and you love it, then it's a hobby. It's not a business. So it's finding really that midpoint of where is the sweet spot where I am doing work that is valued, work that people are willing to pay for, and work that is fulfilling. When you find that sweet spot, then you begin to thrive as a creative. The biggest problem is that the creatives get stuck in the work that they are passionate about, but people are not willing to pay for, and that is then they begin to get isolated and become schizophrenic, if you will, and then have the mental health challenges. But it's just really tinkering a bit and finding that sweet spot, that the work that you love, that gives you fulfillment, is being paid for, but it is also work that you enjoy and yeah, is appreciated. That's all I can say to that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ariho Kamara. As you can imagine, it's now 11:02 to be specific, which means officially we should be wrapping up the session. But what we're going to do now is we will continue for the rest of the panelists who are able to stay around and respond to some of the questions, and we'll open it up. This is a session that Dennis does really, really well. So I want to hand over to him to be available to answer any questions you might have about any of the things that you have heard about the Ideathon, about this creative call from the UN, whose link we've shared again and again in the chat room, so you can be able to go and pick that up and register for that. But otherwise, I want to thank you so much for joining us for the creative session. I'll ask Dennis as he comes, of course, to give you a quick brief on the next sessions. I know you shared it at the beginning of the call, but just to reiterate that, and again, especially for the creatives, the rest of the sessions give you an opportunity to try and listen in and learn and see what opportunities there might be for you to plug into going forward. So I would definitely encourage you to try and look out for those and see what things you might be able to pick up. But also there's some really great insights and thoughts of wisdom that come through from the different panelists on all the different sessions. Otherwise, on behalf of the UNDP and NASE, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for this creative session, and a big thank you to our panelists, of course, as well for joining us. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Ben, for your wonderful moderation. As always, not surprising, but I'd like to also, on behalf of NASE and the UNDP and the whole team of the Ideathon, that includes Jimmy Biarahanga, Ivy in the background, Brenda, we read a lot, and our colleagues from the Accelerator Lab, Vanna, Ashley, Hadija, Innocent, all of you I might forget one person and get myself in trouble. I'd like to thank our panelists specifically for sparing your time this morning. It's been very insightful, lots of insights in particular, and to thank you as well for having shared. I know that the vast majority of the people that applied for this Ideathon are likely to have had or gotten to know about this, observing your profiles on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and other places, and hopefully you can continue to be part of this journey as we aim to inspire our young people to be creative. And for our listeners that have bravely decided to stay behind, I'm just going to go through some of these questions very quickly. And our panelists who want to stay behind, and I have noticed Ariho, Rebecca, et al., you've decided to stay. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So quickly going through this. This is Beyond Epic. This is Nicole Lawino. This is Beyond Epic. Thank you for this opportunity. Can you please say something about mental health? That has been answered, so I'll move that one over. I have seen a gentleman on TV who makes fabric from bananas. Oh, I've seen this one as well. Biggest challenge for him is a demand for his product. Can the industry partner and influence with agriculture? So you're trying to say the guy is creative, and there's a lot of wastage in agriculture. This is what we've been talking about, an ecosystem approach. You can't eat an elephant alone. You need to get lots of other people involved. And I know that the UNDP is actually very specifically pursuing this option so that we bring lots of players to the table. So that's been answered. Anonymous attendee, we try to discourage these anonymous attendees. If you could put your name, it would be very helpful for us to know who you are. Maybe your question can be specific and we can help you. But anonymous attendee is saying, oh, I'm glad to NASE for such an opportunity. I was asking, what can be best done to make the youth of today, to make them and in their creativity, and what can we do to recognize the youth with creativity? I think this has been responded to in very many subtle ways. But one of the things that you can start by doing certainly is to sign up for the Youth Ideathon and the website. If it's not been put in the chat, could I ask one of my colleagues to put the website there for registration? That is the UNDP.NASE website. How relevant is innovation to the art industry? What's the future like for the art industry, especially with the aftermath of the virus and unplanned lockdown? Eva, your guess is as good as mine, but I know that art is eternal. I've seen pieces that have been sold for, $30 million and $100 million worth, and these go way back. So don't relent on the art. David, you seem to have your hand up. Go for it.
Yes, I'd like really quickly like to speak on that before I also take my leave. One of the things that we've started to realize at Kafunda Creative is that there is an AI for almost every creative practice. There's a couple of years ago, guys did this little AI box called Asno. And what it did is that you attach it to your camera and it studied thousands of photos from the best photographers in the world, and then would automatically plug the settings for the best settings for the photo that you're in. We've seen things like that. We've seen Canva. We've seen a lot of stuff that's coming in that allows people to self-create in the places that they're in. And I think the future for creatives now is in the ability to be analytical about the process and understand that. And if you don't do that, then I don't think you're going to survive. Because AI is coming and it's learning fast and learning quickly. AI is writing entire blogs. AI is doing all this stuff. And the ability to, but what AI cannot hack is human psychology. And that's the advantage that we have. And so the ability to be analytical about it and understand these things, I think is going to be where, where we elevate. So if you're out there as a creative, there are things that, beyond just knowing the skill, you need to understand things like the psychology of how people buy and all those things, and skill yourself with these extra things that will help your craft be better. But that said, please, thank you so much for having me. I have to run. Please go sign up at kafundacreative.com if you are in the creative arts. And I really look forward to seeing what comes out of the Youth Ideathon. It's really exciting. Cheers.
Thank you, David. Thanks for your time and all your support. And actually made valid observations that most creatives tend to stay in the lane of creativity and not learn other skills. You can create the best product, but if no one knows about it, no one's going to pay you. So good advice and insights. Next question from Bwire Oscar. Dennis, why do you think that creativity in Uganda has been given the good attention by government so as to be transformed to another level? I think this one is a no-brainer if you are following the elections last year. If you're following the recent elections, I think that's a no-brainer. If you are looking, very many young people, especially like musicians, for instance, the vast majority of whom I'm not so sure were very supportive of the status quo. So the creative industry, with their use of social media and very many others, I don't know. But if you look at the demographics as well, I think the government is realizing that this is not a voice that they can avoid. Next question is, how do you cope with the rising number of online thrift shops given their hiking? Maybe this one is one that I don't know whether Rebecca is still on or Rachel is still on. They probably left. Oh yeah, Rachel. Yes, Rachel, you might be able to save me with this. Which part of London are you in? Let me just ask very quickly.
So I live in the south, in an area called Biggin Hill. So
I know Biggin Hill.
Yeah.
I know Biggin Hill. My family is in Epsom in Surrey.
Oh, that's so close. That's really close.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, how would you answer this question? What are thrift shops, for a start?
First and foremost, I think the idea, I'll start with the London version of what a thrift shop is and how it progressed. Thrift shops used to be where people would take their pre-loved items to so that they can be repurposed. So for the idea of sustainability. In London, you find most thrift shops would either be charity shops or they can even be high-end, whereby quality products like designer products are taken. So pre-loved items, people do give them over either for free or for a small minimum amount, and then they're taken to other homes. Now for Uganda, I feel like people think thrift shops is more like low quality items, yet actually that's not the case. Most times, like if you look at Rebecca's thrift shop initiative, she goes downtown and she makes sure that she gets quality secondhand clothing. And secondhand doesn't need to be that it's designer or it's lesser than. If anything, it's longer term wear, because most of this is already really long-term owned items that people just don't have any use for, or with obviously the change in people dumping most of the clothing from developed countries into Uganda or like third world countries. So I know people have this tendency of thinking, oh, there's duplication of thrift shops. The difference is, how do you stand out? What's the quality? With Rebecca, she even shows the process, the way she decides what items go into her thrift shop and how she repurposes them. So for anyone who's thinking, how do you survive duplication, especially in such an industry? I mean, fashion in general, it's about your quality. It's how you demarcate it. And if it's about thrift shops, you have to look for items that will last a long period of time. We are now moving to an era where people are very conscious and very aware. They want to buy their items, they want quality, and they want it to be very long lasting, at least have a few wears out of it. So the only way I would advise anyone who's thinking, okay, there's duplication, it will always be there, especially in the creative industry, but you must demarcate yourself from, are your things worth it and how long do they last? Because that's what people pay for. Because it's the same, I think I saw a question in the Q&A where someone was like, how do you keep up with the Tenji fashion, yet there's always so many designs out there? Again, creativity. Like I said, some of my creative designs are from me thinking of how do I make the Gomesi look really nice but modern. So it's just think about what demarcates you, what's your creative process, and then go outside the box. People will pay above normal quality because everyone wants to stand out as well. But that being said, I'm definitely also needing to go because it's 9 a.m. in London. We've been awake from 5:30 a.m. I loved this. And if anyone really needed mentorship or to talk to someone, feel free to drop into the Viral Designs Instagram DMs. I'm always very social on there. And I hope this session has been very useful. But yeah, don't be afraid to start things just because it is saturated. The market will never be saturated, especially for creativity.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I'd like to thank you for sparing your time. I know I was never usually an early morning person. I've had no option, but almost all our panelists who have been international have had to wake up very early, and I don't taking 2 or 3 hours of your sleep for granted. So thank you very much. And also welcome your offer to be one of our mentors. Actually, that offer is available to all our panelists. If you haven't been contacted, I know that Ariho Kamara as well, you mentor lots of people. Your flock in church must be so huge now. If you don't mind, we'd like to add about 2,000 youth from the Ideathon. But Rachel, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in London, perhaps towards the end of summer.
See you soon.
Next question was, how can female, or wait, Rachel, before you leave, or she left? Maybe some of the other colleagues might be here because this is for it's a question meant for the females. How can female creatives ward off the imposed timeline that leaves them out of only 5 years to make it before marriage, i.e. out of university 30, which is when most women feel like Bagwire Ahamahega? I can't possibly answer this one. And I'm not sure that Ariho, you can also answer this one. Eble, any much more better than perhaps Hadija?
Let me throw my hat in the ring and then
go good luck.
Ask to but I mean I think I read a book by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1. And I think that's a book that every creative should read, because he talks about where the real creativity is. The real creativity is not on people who are making iterations of what has been done, but it's people who are, breaking new ground. So, for example, all these other social media platforms that we're looking at are really creating iterations of the very first social media platforms that we saw, which are the likes of High Five and MySpace. For those of you who are old enough to remember those things. So when you look at Facebook and YouTube and all these other new things that have come up, we might call them new, but they're really iterations of the people who actually moved from 0 to 1. So for the ladies, I think the things that have a very short gestation period, that if you have that small window that you can actually maximize getting your creativity or getting your creative idea really to be groundbreaking and solving a real issue, a real societal challenge. That way you'll be moving from 0 to 1, and then people will make other alterations of it or will be building on your platforms. But also for ladies, what I can say is don't be afraid to partner. This is for anyone in the creative industry, and I think David talked about it. Don't be afraid to partner. There are people out there with whom you can put your brains together and do something great if you're like-minded. So what I would really throw out there for creatives is to say, when you sit and take a back seat and hope to surprise the world, sometimes you surprise yourself. Just keep tinkering with your idea, and everything will work out well. So yeah, that's my submission to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for saving the day, Ariho. My power has actually just disappeared. It's the first time it's happened in a long time. But luckily, I am still on Wi-Fi. So I hope you can see me and hear me. Can you confirm?
Yeah, you're loud and clear. And I was begging to exit. I have an appointment coming up. But thank you very much. This has been amazing. Thanks for organizing. I'm going to pick up conversations with the other panelists that were here, and maybe we could see how to walk the talk by collaborating and seeing how to do things a new way. But thanks for the opportunity, and to all the panelists, some whom have left and the people who've been on the call. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ariho, and God bless you too.
Thank you.
So the next question is, hello, Dennis, I would like to inquire, does creativity cut across because my ideas are setting up a supermarket and construction and hardware company? I think we know that architecture is part of the creative industry, but if you're setting up a factory, then that falls into manufacturing, and we have all sessions on each one of those. But whatever idea you have, please go ahead and submit that. The next question is, great to be here. That's creative. Yeah, I think we've answered this one. The next one, Dennis, I asked a question earlier, but it's a negative one on why the government has not given that too much attention to the creative industry. That's, I think we've answered that. It's too political, but we've attempted to answer that. This session has been great. This is Bridget Tusinza. This session has been great, and I agree completely with Mr. Dennis. Creativity is required in various business sectors because creativity is the backbone of problem solving anywhere. Totally agree as well. Lukman, why is it our films, Ugandan, are not standard at all professionally, yet much effort has been put in place to develop the film industry? Johnson. I think Lukman has left, if I'm not mistaken. Ben, if you're still on the line, you might be able to help answer this one. Perhaps the next one is, how do you position yourself as a 17-year-old comic book artist and animator in Uganda to achieve these crafts without being derailed? Who can help me with this one? As you can tell, I'm not a comics. Comics is not my area of expertise. But if you have an idea of a comic book, I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up for the Ideathon, because who knows? You might actually surprise yourself, because we'll have a whole list of panelists that are going to help you to look into this. Let me just carry on going through the questions. If my colleagues would help me upvote them so that I pick the most important ones in the next 10, 15 minutes. Elizabeth Ajalo, thank you for this. The value is priceless. Will there be a thematic session for digital space and IT? Yes, there will be. Check on the website for the upcoming sessions. And I think that one, if I'm not mistaken, is next week. Next one is Nicole Lawino. This is particularly for Rebecca, if that's okay. Sadly, Rebecca has left, but let me read the question nonetheless. As a woman in a creative business, what advice can you impart to young female entrepreneurs? It's hard to stay true to your identity without everyone having an idea on who you should be. If you could just share some hopeful tips for keeping your head above the water. That's a very interesting question, and it's a shame that Rebecca has left. I'm not sure who else is able to answer this one at this particular occasion, but we will have in the coming panels quite a number of female panelists. This one is one I would think panelists like Evelyn Amara should be able to answer perfectly. So please do sign up for the upcoming sessions. Beth Ingavire, I think getting people to value what creatives do starts from the education system. I think we need to go from the foundation. Teachers despised classes like music, art, blah, 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 blah. It goes back to education. Totally agree. And a lot of the work that NASE is doing, focusing in that section, hopefully will begin to show results in due course. Mutali Martin, I think we have a missing link of the creative industry because of a copy and paste in the creatives. I'll let my friend Albert from the UNDP, who I failed or forgot to introduce, to come to my rescue. I hope there will be no sour grapes because of that. Bruno Ignatius Namisi, I disagree with Rebecca on the fact that business does not need accountants because the systems are automated. They are needed. Human, if I know where this one is going, yes, we agreed that you can't do everything alone. And as an entrepreneur, you can't do everything alone. While you see me here as the team lead at NASE, behind you have my colleagues, the Jimmys, the Ivies, and everyone else. We have the likes of Ben Winner from Celeste Media helping us with some of our media stuff. So it's an ecosystem approach. You can't do everything by yourself. Buire Oscar, as we're moving to the digital era, we should put this in mind that there is a human labor that uplifts creativity, but machines can't. So let's use machines just to add the ideas that we come up with. Thanks, it's Oscar. I'm not very sure what the question was, but you're talking about the judgment between machine and human. I think those two are going to be intertwined. Although if you look at the Industrial Revolution, while it was previously machines, now machines are getting smarter to an extent that the future, perhaps you won't need humans. Who knows? These are the areas of artificial intelligence that we will be getting into in a not so distant future. I also implore you, this is Bruno going on, to be keen on intellectual property rights. That's a very interesting question because we are actually on Monday at around 3 p.m., I think we're going to have a special session on intellectual property. So I would hope that everyone signs up for that, but also working with colleagues from ILA. Any idea that is submitted as part of the Ideathon, we are going to ensure that we support you to ensure that your intellectual property is registered. Next question. I apologize in case I'm speaking very quickly, but there's over 51 questions that I need to answer in the next 24 seconds. And again, I would ask my colleagues to help upvote them because at the moment, most of the ones I'm looking at have only one vote. So it would be helpful if they had more than one vote that they can come up and I can see which ones are need more attention. Otherwise, we won't go through the next 51 questions. Kukundakwe Yvonne, good morning. I am Kukundakwe. Mr. Hamid, would you please elaborate more on research involvement in the creativity? Sadly, he's left. Mr. Ogutu, inspiring, but how can I, Andrew, as a graphic designer and a filmmaker, add value to my business and customers? Yet we are, if you want to add value, then please do sign up. This particular question is relevant for the master classes, which are coming the week after next. How can we, bear with me 1 second. More questions coming up. I apologize, I'm using my my phone because our power, I think our power has come back, but I need to switch my laptop on. But let me carry on. I am Elizabeth, and for the art industry, there's something I landed on. in the crypto space, non-fungible tokens, NFT. Do you think it's a venture that can be embraced in time with the visual arts, let alone the fluctuations in the crypto space? This is something that you should bring in the ICT sector. A thematic session on ICT next week. I'm sure there will be someone that can answer this. Good morning, guys. Thanks for the eye-opening session on creatives. How do I, oh, good. The questions are being reassigned, so that's good. Thanks for the eye-opening session on creatives. How do I grow my following swiftly on social media handles to promote my ideas broadly? Again, this is another one that is going to be, because it's every business, it's not just this particular section. It's one of those that is going to be talked about in the masterclasses. What is the project sustainability? This is Kisinga. What's project sustainability plan to keep in touch with the platforms that have applied to engage on this move? That question is not very clear, so I'm not able to answer that. Wandera Brian Roy, how can we make our communities appreciate our creativity? Because however much we can sell online, it's more satisfying if our creativity would benefit our communities. I totally agree. But again, your business model is one of those things that we'll have to look at in the master classes. So I would encourage you to again sign up. Baynald Ronald, again, my colleagues, if you could please upvote the questions so that I deal with the most important ones, because we have just a few more minutes before we wrap these ones up. Many creative minds are out there, but they are failing out with drafting paperwork and funds to put into many circumstances whenever they reach the people to help them. I think this one is talking about the frustration that you get when you go through very many applications and putting your paperwork out and things like that. Well, first and foremost, that is part of entrepreneurship. No one said it was easy, but just to answer your concerns, as part of the idea fund, we're focusing just on the idea, and we will help you with other things in due course if you make it to the incubation. So this one is not one of those where we want you to provide 5-year business plans and things like that, no. Next question, Bajend Wycliffe. To Mr. Dennis, I work with the Rising Fashion and Music label. We have been in existence for almost 6 years. So you're not rising, you've been in existence. Unfortunately, our audience has not embraced us as we had expected. We have had some little reception from some of the people that believe in us, but we have hit our expectation. We haven't hit our expectation. Do you really think we have something wrong with our marketing strategy? Very good question. I would encourage that you get in touch with our colleague, Manana, very creative guy. He's into this music landscape. He should have sent you in the right direction. So if you send this particular message to info@nase.co.ug, then we will be able to help you. Next question. Kalijirwa Bridget Chigambo. Our challenges are now getting an affordable printing service to advertise on our platform. That's not a question, it's a statement. Is it possible to have Hamid's contact? Yes, he shared his Instagram handles. Can rearing be regarded as a creative? Rearing what? Animals? I'm not so sure. Hi, good morning. My name is, and some of these questions are coming from 10 o'clock. So if I'm only seeing one upvote, it means that these are really not, let me just maybe go through them without necessarily using the voting system. Bear with me 1 second. Jimmy and Bana and Susan, please could you help me and upvote some of these questions so that I'm able to go through them. There's quite a number of them. We still have voted 2, and I want to wrap them up in the next few minutes. Good morning. My name is Odonglira Brian Lapai, and I'm, bear with me. All that's disappeared because of the upvoting. It's fine. Does the location of your startup as a creative dictate on your success? Or what are the action steps that can help win the market despite location? Location is actually very important depending on what you do. If, for instance, you're in music, your studio, it doesn't matter where your studio is. We listen to music from all over the world, so it shouldn't matter. But if you're selling clothes, Again, I know that a lot of the clothes are sold online. It's not new, but for some creative people, location might matter. Again, this is one of those where it has to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Another person wanted Hamid's number. Self-sabotaging habits. Someone mentioned about this as well. Michelle Masanza. The question goes to Rachel. She has left, sadly. What are some of the gaps and challenges for roadblocks that you have identified with the e-commerce in Africa? I think that is a question that can also be answered in the ICT platform next, ICT thematic session next week. Does the beauty industry fall under the creatives? Yes, it does, I would have thought. It's not talked about much here. It would be helpful if you had more information. Is this the area you're interested in, and what specifically are you interested in beauty? Is it makeup? Is it, what is it? More information would have been helpful. Fabrice Kaburugutu from Burundi. Oh, fantastic. This thing is going global. We had someone from Kenya the other day, Rwanda. Today we had Nigeria, Burundi, the UK. We had South Africa, I think. So the ideathon has really gone global. I'm dealing with modern agriculture, rural electrification to stimulate agriculture industrialization. But the problem we have, if we have collaborations, how can the process, this is about agriculture though, sadly. You missed the session yesterday. The recordings are going to be available on our YouTube channel, which I forgot to mention about. Jimmy, please, could you put a link of our YouTube channel in the chat so that people can subscribe and watch all the videos from the previous sessions? Okay, Daniels, thanks to the NASE team. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Edward, how do early childhood computer science education nurture in the creativity? Does this have a place in the creatives? Yes, it depends on what exactly you're doing, but it could also be in the ICT sector. And I would encourage you to sign up for the session next week. How best can we youth get access to more mentorship about the creatives? That one is a simple answer. Sign up for the Youth Ideathon. Mentorship is one of those. Now that the innovation is developing in the legal space, how can one use innovations to solve legal problems? Again, ICT related. Where is the link? I think that was shared, but colleagues, please share the links in the chat. Links about registration for the Ideathon, links about our YouTube channel. Will everybody be welcome to the Creative Space Center that's going to be built, as earlier mentioned? Xander, that was my dream, my rallying call, that our friends and partners from the UNDP should perhaps help us set up this center where people like yourself can actually come and play with some of these toys and get your creative juices going. So it hasn't been built yet, but there's power in words. We're speaking to the universe that we make this happen. So keep fingers crossed. We'll see how this goes. Behangana, Conrad. Thanks, Dennis, for your fundamental role. But this system is in urban areas, whereas in village areas, there's some students who are so creative, but they don't have access to these panels. What could be done to reach out to these children who are deep in the villages to be enlightened about this? That's a genuine observation, Conrad. Sadly, because of a ban on inter-district travel, there is not much we can do in terms of movement to reach them. There really is no other way of getting there. The other options are telephones and radios, all of which we have used, but we will explore and review our efforts after next week to see how we can reach some of the other individuals. Maybe in the future rounds that we're going to be doing, I don't think this is the last Ideathon that you'll be seeing. There will be more that we're going to be doing. In fact, we had planned to do this thing in different regions. So it's unfortunate that because of lockdown, we're not able to go in the different regions. But this is something we're going to look into as the situation evolves, especially if lockdown is lifted in 2 weeks' time. Ben Winnie, you missed my question. There's this beauty industry. I think we've answered that one. Boniface Biamukama, graphics designer and storyteller in print art. I love telling stories. When Dennis speaks about creating games that are from our culture, I have an idea of doing so many games that we played as little kids, for example, Kwepena, Duru. Please, 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 Boniface, do sign up for the Ideathon. But now that we've talked about this, the idea is probably out. So, but do sign up. Let's help you make this work and happen. I'm particularly passionate about gaming. Odonglira Brian Lapai, I have a creative idea to create a city of plastics from plastics dream and turn it into a tourism sector. Fantastic. There is another session next week around smart cities and things to do with wastage and being creative around that. I'm looking forward to that session as well, actually. Madam Amanda Ngavelano is going to be on it. Louis Nisima, Madam Rebecca, how would you cope with competition from the growing thrift shops on social media? She sadly left, but competition is a part of entrepreneurship. Then there are ways around this. Just distinguish yourself, maybe find your own market. But again, if you sign up and go all the way to the end of the ideathon, this will be covered in the masterclass sessions. Katsume Diana to Ben. You are a celebrated MC, which means you are a good speaker. How did you know that you were ready to take in this space? How is it like to be a good MC? Katsume, actually, I can answer this one on behalf of Ben. I've known Ben since like P5, and we went together in Barra High School. I remember him even in senior 1, 2, 3, setting up like a radio in the corner, doing this DJing, would you believe? I remember when radio stations, FM stations first came, Sanyu FM, we were neighbors in Bugolovi, and Ben and I were up all night waiting for the first airwaves to land. So I can actually confirm that in Uganda, Ben and I were one of the first people to listen to FM radio because we were literally there waiting for it. So he's been in this space for a while. He's been very passionate about it. And even when he had to go and do computer science at Makerere University, never lost his dream. He's worked in almost every radio station, TV station, and you can see he's still doing great. So if you're passionate about something, just go ahead and focus on it. Your break will come eventually. So Ben is not where he is just because of a break yesterday. No, he's been at it for a while. Next question. Thank you very much. What should be done to improve the use of digital technologies in the creative industry? This would also best answered next week in the ICT panel. Corporate transform combine. What do you think of that creativity formula? My thoughts on this are that there's nothing new under the sun, and innovation does not have to be radical. It can be incremental. So I think if it works for you, go for it. Hello, is that link applied to Burundi, or is it for Ugandan citizens only? I think this is Fabrice again. The ideathon is open to Ugandans, regardless of where they live. But now that you're talking about citizenship, presumably you are a citizen of Burundi. Can I ask my colleagues on the call, particularly Bana and Hadija, to make note of this, that the ideathon seems to be attracting attention from other regions, other countries within other regions. Perhaps it's another good idea to engage partners in the different regions to do something similar under the UNDP. Of course, NASE would be delighted to support all the way because I'm seeing this happening a lot. We're getting a lot of interest from Burundi. It would be very helpful actually for us, Fabrice, to know how you got to know about the ideathon. If you could send us an email, info@nase.co.ug, that would be really, really very helpful. Thank you. After registering, is there another form of application required? Lydia, no. There is no other form of application. All that you will have to be doing is have access to this digital platform, and you'll be progressing your idea as you go along. You will I will explain that maybe after the end of next week's sessions when we get into the master classes. So there will be no more applications. This is it. Kwasia Abu, thanks for this program. So I was like, can you guys attach your social media pages here for easy accessibility? Speaking like a proper youth. Can I ask my colleagues on the call to please share our socials? We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we are all over the place. Fabrice, oh, this is you again. Your question has been answered. This one has also been answered. And this one is from Nigeria. I think this one was also answered as well in some form, which is about upscaling. If I'm not mistaken. To all the panelists, why do you think most people who have come up with the ideas have been sabotaged? And this might be too personal to respond to. Okay, I think we're going to call it a day with regards to the number of questions. I'm very happy that we still have over 100 of you guys still signed in. So thank you very much. Are there any questions that are directly addressed to me? If you have a question that I can answer directly, you can raise your hand and I'll give you a chance to do that. But if there are no hands raised, or maybe if my colleagues are looking at some of the messages that are in form of a question and want to raise them, again, I can respond to them. And just go through the chats very briefly. Casagalores, Mr. Dennis, I'm from the high school too. That's good to see. Oh, there's an OB there. I make maths, decorative. Yeah, the chats are really long. What I'm also going to do is ask my colleagues to make note of the chats and all the questions, including those that have been asked, because I don't have access to my laptop at the moment. I'm looking at everything from the phone. So I'm not able to do what we did the other day. So if you could please make note of all the chats and all the questions, that would be great. But other than that, to thank you all so very much for attending today's session, attending all the sessions that we've had throughout the week. We are doing this thing again next week. We will have sessions from around 4 other areas that include mining, that include ICT sector, that include urban cities and all. Albert, your hand is up. Do you want to talk?
I was just notifying you that we have 4 hands raised from the attendees. You just asked them.
Okay, sadly I can't see them. If you could please allow each, maybe start with the ladies first. Allow one at a time to talk and let me know who they are, and then they can ask their question.
Unfortunately, they all seem to be male. There's Kenneth, Elisha, and the rest. Let me
start. It's not unfortunate. It's consistent with the data that we've been seeing, that men, boys, they seem to be more forthcoming. But carry on, nonetheless.
Yeah, now I see Dana is on. All right. Dana, you're allowed to go. Please go ahead.
Hello. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be part of this, and thank you so much for the thematic session. But my question is motivational speaking and counseling session part of the creatives?
That's a very good, I know that, that's a very good question. I know that spoken word, which often is very inspirational and motivational, is part of the creatives. But I know that the media, journalists and, that kind of world are part of the creatives industry. So I think I would put it within that category, definitely, yes. If that's one of your ideas, please go ahead and throw it in the creatives category. Any other question, Albert?
Right now we have Kenneth.
Kenneth, you're allowed to speak.
Right, so let's have Deus. Since Kenneth is not unmuting. Deus?
If you could mention both their names, because there might be 4 Kenneths and one is not sure.
No, Kenneth only has just the name Kenneth, but he raised his hand. Then Zaire Deus. You're also allowed to speak. That's Deus, yep. Let's go ahead. Deus, you're unmuted, please. Okay, in the interest of time, let's have Universe. Universe, you can unmute and speak.
Okay. Albert, I've actually just discovered I'm possibly able to do this as well. Azir Deus is not muted, so he should be able to speak. If he can't speak, we go to the next one. Yes, who's that?
Hello. I'm Kranima. I'm a creator. I am from Reminaka University. We make comics and such. So my question is, I think it's very important that there be appraisal structures put in place to encourage creatives in different respects. And I'm wondering what UNDP is planning to do in order to set up these structures. There could be like award ceremonies, like for instance, the best upcoming comic book artists, the best, let's say, filmmakers and such for different like areas of the creative industry, because it's really vast. And I feel that since Uganda is young creatively, I think it's necessary that there be these structures to encourage young people coming up in the creative industry to see like a lot of hope in this. Thank
you very much. I am really, really glad that this has come from yourself, because this is one of the things we had planned to do as part of the finals, to have different categories where people are acknowledged, because often when you participate in competitions like these, often only those that win the grants get celebrated and other people are left reeling. But one of the things we've done in the past, let's say, maybe even not taking you back there, and the creative industry is big. So having some kind of platform where they are recognized, acknowledged, and celebrated is really one of those things that we've been thinking about, but we had not gotten to that stage yet. Perhaps this might be a part of the opportunity as we do the ideathon, that for the creatives track, which my colleagues on the call will confirm, that we really go all out far and wide and have a ceremony of identifying and showcasing some of these other creative individuals. So that is really a very good observation. We'll take it up. It's been duly noted. Maybe the next person to ask is those whose hands are up. Nicole Lawino. Nicole Lawino.
Hello. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So good morning. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much. This opportunity means so much to creatives because we are a group of people who have really been marginalized, and it's nice to see people actually taking an interest in what we have to offer to the world. So my question is a bit vague, but if you could share kindly what exactly NASE is looking for. Yeah, what are you looking for in these innovations that we're presenting? Are you seeking people who already have some traction, or are you seeking ideas that have a more social entrepreneurial affiliation? What exactly are you looking for to say that this is a kind of innovation that we believe we can back our money against? And yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for your appreciation of the work we're doing. And your question is not vague, actually, it's very specific. Indeed, it answers exactly why the ideathon is the ideathon. We have resisted the temptation to be very prescriptive as to what a good idea actually is, because we don't have a clue. You know, I've been surprised in the past by, I've been a judge on quite a number of these things, and sometimes you look at an idea and you're like, yeah, let's just give them a chance. I'll give you an example of things like mobile money when they first started it in Pesa in Kenya. You would have thought that because it was dealing with money that like the Central Bank of Kenya should have regulated it, but they didn't think it was going to be of any consequence. So they said, nah, just let them crack on. We just keep an eye on it. Before you know it, mobile money is across the whole of Africa, and it's big. MTN is moving more money than all banks combined, you know. So we would be on very high horses to assume that we know what a brilliant idea is going to be. That idea is coming from yourself. So we can't be very prescriptive. Also, you could have been working on your idea, sleeping about it. Maybe you've never had an idea, or maybe you've tried your idea out, but no one has given you a hand, and you could use this 100 million, for instance. So the ideathon is such an entry-level proposition that we will deal with the situation as it goes along. We will deal with the business as it goes along. The focus really is on the idea. If it's a brilliant idea and we think it has traction, then we want to give you a chance to explore that. It would be immaterial whether your idea has just been birthed or whether you and your 4 friends have been working at it for 6 months or whether you actually already a registered business, but you didn't have the funding to do the kind of thing that you wanted to do. In fact, some of the ideas that we don't mind having as well is you could actually be a registered business, but that particular business now has a new idea, a new way of doing things that they want to submit. Even that is welcome. So we would not want you to feel like the structure is too complicated or sophisticated. Maybe, and this is one of the lessons that the UNDP has learned over the years, that sometimes when we put out some of these calls, they appear so sophisticated that ordinary young people may not relate with them. So we're breaking down all those barriers and leveling it, putting the bar so low as to encourage as many people as possible. And even if this particular idea that you're talking about does not succeed, the process alone would make you much more attuned to when your next idea emerges. You know probably what to do, how to go about it. That is the intention. Could we find another one person and then we can wrap it up? I'm very excited that there's still over 100 people on the call. This is very, very encouraging for us running the Youth Ideathon. Let's see, who else is there? Kakai Diana, your hand is raised. You have been given, oh, wait a minute. I think your permission has been removed. Okay, if you want to speak, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up in 1 minute very shortly. Are there any comments? Maybe if I could use this opportunity to give my colleagues a chance to say a thing or two. Any colleagues from the UNDP? Bana, do you want to make a comment at all? Bana, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Dennis.
Do you want to say a thing or two before we wrap up?
Not really, just to thank that the members that have been present. I know at one point we hit over 200 members. It's very refreshing, like I always say at the end of these sessions, to see how many people out there interested in these different thematic stations. 200 people today, and I'm sure there will even be more because there's a certain section of the creatives probably that can't connect online. But we are very grateful that you're part and parcel of this initiative. We hope that out of this we shall get something that will be very tangible to support the creative industry in Uganda. Again, I implore you to apply for the call. Please don't forget to apply. All the information has continuously been put into the chat, and do not hesitate to reach out in case of anything. And we hope that we continue to pray and hope that some of these initiatives will help us to be very successful in building the ecosystem around the creatives.
Thank you very much, Bana, and thank you and your colleagues for your never-ending support and the fun way in which we're going about delivering the Youth Ideathon. Perhaps one last shout is to our Business Incubation Manager, Jimmy Biaranga. Is there anything you want to say that I may not have captured? I know you've been in the background trying to sort out quite a number of things, questions and all. And do you want to say one or two things before we wrap it up? Jimmy, are you there? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I've been following. I like how the session has been handled. And the mere fact that towards close, you still have close to 100 young people, that shows the enthusiasm. My call to the young people is to know that this is real, this is genuine. There are people out there that are willing to help the creatives. You don't have to walk this journey alone, and invite fellow young people, rally them to www.undp.nase.co.ug so that they can also register their ideas. Creatives reach out to others. They make other people's lives more beautiful. So just do that, reach out to others, encourage them to apply also for this new call for the UNDP so that we change our country, we change the narrative around creatives, and we're able to impact those around us. So thank you, and look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, on Monday we're doing a live Zoom and potentially Facebook session around intellectual property, which has been a big issue. But we'll be communicating. There will be emails going out in the course of the weekend for everyone. I'd like to thank everyone, my colleagues, panelists, and especially Albert Abuyang for ensuring that everyone is able to listen to each other and see each other. So thank you very much. And Dorothy as well on the sign language and your colleagues. Thank you so much. And to the panelists, sorry, to the participants for spending your time this morning and joining us, being with us for 3 long hours. Thank you, namaste, and we'll see you on Monday, Tuesday next week. Over and out. Have a blessed weekend.